Chapter 1995. Senior Colonel Tan, who really wanted to test her, sat up straighter and looked sternly at the military academy student who said, "Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers." At this moment, Senior Colonel Tan no longer had a smile on his face. On the contrary, his expression was so cold that it seemed to twist the air around him. "Yi Qian, how much do you know?" he asked again. He didn't test her anymore and asked directly. From Yi Qian, he saw the toughness that a soldier should have. He didn't give in to power and disdain to scheme. It was better to speak openly and honestly when talking to them. Yi Qian didn't like to test people. Since the military commission had already intervened and the commander-in-chief said that they were all trustworthy leaders, she trusted the commander-in-chief's arrangements and also trusted this senior colonel in front of her. She looked at the senior colonel with her clear black eyes and replied calmly, "Chief Kai said a lot. In addition to the guesses I had in the past, I know a lot. This time, I suddenly came to the military commission and saw you and the two figures that flashed past the door. I'm even more certain that the person who killed my mother is of a high rank. Otherwise, why would the leader of the military commission be alerted?" Senior Colonel Tan crossed his arms on the walnut desk. He was surprised and asked in a low voice, "From what I know, Chief Kai didn't say much." "Yi Qian, how did you guess?" "He didn't say much. I just needed to say the main points." In the face of the senior colonel's domineering aura, Yi Qian replied calmly, "Now that I have the main point, I can think about it on my own and come up with my own guesses. It's not a difficult thing for me to do, sir. First of all, my mother's life was erased for no reason and no one in the military noticed it when she was alive. Even the military didn't know about it. This alone shows that this person's identity is not simple. Secondly, your appearance and the appearance of the other two chiefs has shocked me. This shows that my mother's sacrifice is not simple. Also, I know that when my mother came back, the Prime Minister personally covered the flag and told the military to take good care of me. However, before the second year of the Chinese New Year, I didn't receive any special care from the military. On the contrary, Chief Kai and the others thought that I died when I fell into the water at a young age. Chief, do you think I can't guess what's going on? I've guessed many things, but I still can't believe it." He had guessed many things, but he still couldn't believe it. It was a few simple and calm words, but they made all the senior officials who heard it feel extremely heavy in their hearts. Even so, she still believed in the army and her country. Therefore, although she had guessed many things, she still did not dare to believe it. Commander-in-Chief Xia and Major General Song's faces sank. How could they disappoint the soldiers who were loyal to the country and the army? Absolutely not. "Old Xia, no matter how big the scope of this matter is, let's work together and get to the bottom of it." Major General Song clenched his fists and slammed the table angrily. He said sternly, "I don't believe that we can't find the truth after a strict investigation." He was the leader of the investigation team. The highest leader had given him full authority to investigate this matter in order to give martyr Sun Xueqing justice. In the meeting room, Yi Qian gave his own guesses. They were all based on what Chief Kai had said before. It was so reasonable that Senior Colonel Tan nodded his head repeatedly. Occasionally, when he raised a question, Yi Qian would immediately answer it. He would also use his own careful reasoning to rationalize the situation. Chapter 1996. He was eloquent and unhurried. His reasoning was so meticulous that it made people gasp in amazement. However, Yi Qian actually made a colonel and a major general look at him in a different light with just one conversation. This made Commander-in-Chief Xia even more satisfied than he already was. "Your guess is correct, Yi Qian. We invited you to the capital to tell you that there is something wrong with your mother's sacrifice. It's related to a major case from more than a decade ago. After hearing Yi Qian's speculation, Colonel Tan only felt that it was extremely terrifying to have a woman like this. He was even more glad that this woman entered the army and was loyal to the army and the country. Luckily, she wasn't spoiled. Luckily, she was still an upright person and didn't go down the wrong path. With her intelligence, if she went down the wrong path, she could still make a name for herself. Since she had already guessed this point, there was no need to be guarded against some words. He could also let her know that the military commission attached great importance to martyr Sun Xueqing's death. We have already become a special investigation team to investigate martyr Sun Xueqing's death. The former director of the Linchuan Military Region's political department, Major General Song, will be the investigation team leader. The military commission's secretary, Lieutenant General Miao, will be the person in charge. The military commission's secretary, Secretary Miao, will be the general supervisor. We will conduct a comprehensive investigation into martyr Sun Xueqing's death. You were never disappointed in the country, and the country never gave up on you. It's even more impossible for a martyr to be humiliated like this after her sacrifice. The country won't allow it, and the entire army won't allow it. Yi Qian stood up and saluted Colonel Tan. His dark and bright eyes were filled with his trust in the country and the military. I've always believed in it. Justice may come late, but it will never die. This is great. Mother, your daughter didn't stand up for you in her previous life. In this life, your daughter can openly walk into the military commission's office and tell the leaders that you didn't die in battle, but were murdered. Yi Zhifan, no matter how powerful the people behind you are, no matter how high you climb, pulling you down is no longer my biggest headache. With the military commission's investigation, your good days are over. The big case from more than 10 years ago was brought up again. The dusty history was no longer covered in dust. The truth buried in darkness was only waiting for the sharp sword of the military commission to split it open and let the truth be revealed again. The conversation was over. Major General Song turned off the monitor and praised Commander-in-Chief Xia. Amazing, amazing. This cadet from the military academy was really something. I'm really glad that she's a military school student with the right values. If she had chosen the wrong path, she would definitely have caused trouble everywhere. He was too smart, so smart that it was terrifying. There was no shortage of smart people in the military, but Yi Qian's intelligence was not the intelligence of a flexible mind, but the intelligence of his ability to do things. She had meticulously dissected and slowly sorted out the clues, and in the end, she had actually gotten close to the truth. Listening to her analysis and her guesses made people break out in cold sweat for no reason. Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't like the last sentence. What did she mean by able to choose the wrong path and cause trouble everywhere? Even if Xiao Yi didn't join the military, she wouldn't be a bad person. Even if she didn't join the military, she's still an honest child. Just now, when she said, I've guessed a lot, but I still can't believe it, it's enough to tell that she's an honest and righteous child. Commander-in-Chief Xia definitely had to protect his future daughter-in-law. Major General Song still didn't know about the relationship between Yi Qian and family Xia. When he heard this, he nodded in agreement. She's indeed an honest child. He suddenly changed the topic and said with great interest, Old Xia, this is a good seedling. Your side even covered up her information. You're going to train her to be the sharp knife of the army. Chapter 1997. After the conversation with Yi Qian ended, Commander-in-Chief Xia also planned to leave. When Major General Song asked about Yi Qian's future plans, he pondered for a moment and said, I have such a plan. But before that, we have to investigate the case of martyr Sun Xueqing. I don't want anyone to use their power again and cause the country to lose another outstanding soldier. Yi Qian has an uncle who is now the director of the Southern Province Construction Bureau. Back then, she was fostered in his house. Yi Qian just said that the mastermind behind the scenes didn't dare to kill Yi Qian directly. They might have instructed Yi Zhifan to raise her into a useless person. Old song, although beating the grass won't startle the snake, you can still startle the snake this time. Investigate Yi Zhifan's history and let the Central Committee for Discipline Inspection get involved in the investigation. First, remove his official position. Then, pay attention to who in the military will care about Yi Zhifan's fall. Then, we should be able to lock onto the target. Then, with this target as a coordinate, we'll start an investigation on the target's connections. At the same time, we'll be able to find out which big tiger is responsible for harming the country and the people of the army that Sun Xueqing was in. Major General Song thought about it for a while and nodded. What you said is a good idea. Okay, I will have a small meeting with them and plan out the follow-up step by step. It won't be difficult for the Central Committee for Discipline Inspection to get involved. The Legal News newspaper started to publish reports about officials' corruption and bribery last year. Let them go to the southern province to investigate. Yi Qian didn't know that Commander-in-Chief Xiao's words had caused Yi Zhifan's career to come to an end. She walked out of the meeting room and pursed her lips. She seemed to have made up her mind and asked Senior Colonel Tan, who had ordered the guards to come over, "Chief, can I ask you something?" "Yes, why not? Ask away." Senior Colonel Tan, who had a good impression of Yi Qian, smiled and said, "I've already told you everything about your mother. If you ask again, it won't be easy to answer." Yi Qian shook her head. "No, it's not that. I'd like to ask Chief Kai. Is he doing well?" They had been talking about her mother just now, so she didn't dare to interrupt. "Kai Zhizhang, he's doing well. Don't worry, he'll be fine. He just needs to stay for a few more days. There are also a few comrades who have a good relationship with your mother and are investigating together with Kai Zhizhang. They haven't come yet. When they come, we can ask them some questions and then let them leave." With Colonel Tan's words, Yi Qian was relieved. Just then, a guard came over, and he followed the guard out of the military discipline inspection building. She always walked fast. Commander-in-Chief Xia only chatted with Major General Song for 2 minutes before she saw Colonel Tan walking over alone. "Where's Xiao Yi?" "Gone." Colonel Tan saluted before replying, "She just left. I asked the guards to send her away." "Is there anything else you need from her, Commander-in-Chief?" "Yes, I have something to ask her. Go look for Old Song. He's still waiting for you." When Commander-in-Chief Xia heard that Yi Qian had left alone, he quickened his pace and led the guards outside. It was the new year, he hadn't given her a red packet yet. As for the old mansion, he wouldn't make things difficult for her for the time being. She would definitely feel uncomfortable following him there. He could only wait for his brat to come back and take her to the old mansion to visit Old Master and Old Madam. Yi Qian had already asked the sentinel at the door. She knew that the commander-in-chief hadn't left, so she stood outside and waited. In less than 5 minutes, she saw the commander-in-chief hurrying out with 2 guards. "It's good that you didn't leave. I was talking to Old Song and when I came out, you were gone." Commander-in-Chief Xia signaled the guard to drive the car over. He then asked Yi Qian, "There's nothing else here. Do you plan to return to the southern province now? Or do you want to stay in the capital for a few days?" Chapter 1998. Before Yi Qian came, she thought that she would have to stay in the capital for a few days to cooperate with the military commission's investigation. Who knew that they would just let her go after asking her a few questions? Therefore, when Commander-in-Chief Xia questioned her, Yi Qian actually felt a little uneasy. Since she was already in the capital during the New Year, it would be rude of her not to go to Commander-in-Chief Xiao's house to give her New Year's greetings. But if she were to go, Captain Xia was not by her side. Would it be inappropriate for her to go just like that? There was also one more thing to consider. Commander-in-Chief Xia should not be in the courtyard for the new year. He should have returned to the family Xia's old residence in Beihai's old alley to spend the new year with Old Master and Old Madam. If she wanted to go over, wouldn't she have to go to the old residence? It was winter, and Yi Qian's forehead was dripping with sweat. She wanted to be gracious, but she really could not bring herself to say that she wanted to go to the old residence to give her New Year's greetings. She even felt a little nervous. After thinking for a few seconds, she replied respectfully, "Before I came, I thought that I would have to stay in the military commission for a few days. I didn't expect to leave so soon. Commander-in-Chief, I haven't decided whether to return to the southern province immediately or stay in the capital for a few days to play. Just say what you want." Who is Commander-in-Chief Xia? He was a dignified general. Who knew how many demons and ghosts he had revealed with his fiery eyes? It was better for her to be honest and not try to play tricks. She really did not expect to come over in such a hurry. The military commission only found out how much she knew about her mother's case and told her that the people involved were not simple. They also reminded her not to get involved. The entire conversation was completely different from what she had imagined. Everything he said was for her sake. There wasn't even a single word of reprimand, let alone making things difficult for her. Commander-in-Chief Xia felt a little helpless at her respectful attitude. As a very open-minded parent, he had repeatedly expressed to his future daughter-in-law that he was an easygoing elder. But in the end, she was still as reserved in front of him. She lowered her head and looked at him submissively. She did not have the imposing manner she had when she was talking to committee member Tan. Could it be that he had no affinity at all? Commander-in-Chief Xia, who suspected that he was not amiable enough, smiled pleasantly and said, "If you want to stay in the capital for a few days, I'll ask your sister Wei to come and play with you. If you want to go back to the southern province to accompany old Qin, I'll ask the guards to send you to the airport now. I won't take you to the old mansion today. If Old Sixth was here, I would have asked him to pick you up without hesitation. But he's not in the capital now, so I'll have to wait for him to come back." Commander-in-Chief Xia could naturally see the hesitation in Yi Qian's heart. This child was quite good. He never put on airs in front of the people around him and was open and honest. Family Xia didn't need a scheming daughter-in-law, nor did he need a daughter-in-law who was full of schemes. Family Xia just wanted a daughter-in-law who was as indomitable and broad-minded as a man. Yi Qian knew that Commander-in-Chief Xia must have seen through his concerns. He pursed his lips in embarrassment and said, "Commander-in-Chief, when Captain Xia comes back, I will go to the old mansion to visit Old Master and Old Madam." He planned to go back to the southern province on the same day. Okay. I'll tell Old Sixth about your intentions and ask him to set a time with you to visit Old Master and Old Madam. It just so happens that the two elders have been looking forward to your visit. The guard had already driven the car over. Commander-in-Chief Xia got into the car and said directly, "Go to the airport." Yi Qian felt relieved and grateful at the same time. He felt that Commander-in-Chief Xia's family was very easy to get along with. In the future, yes, in the future, she would be filial to the Commander-in-Chief, Old Master and Old Madam. Chapter 1999. Thinking of this, Yi Qian blushed. She was determined to marry Captain Xia. Do whatever you need to do when you return to Southern Province. Don't be distracted by the conversation with the military commission. I believe you've seen the military commission's attitude towards you, so don't take it to heart. In the car, Commander-in-Chief Xia maintained a gentle tone and told Yi Qian that he was a friendly and open-minded parent. Sixth brother didn't accompany you during the new year. I hope you can spend the holidays happily and don't burden yourself. Dad, Yi Qian, who was still blushing, almost choked on her own saliva. She thought uneasily, did the commander-in-chief see through my thoughts just now? The thin-skinned Yi Qian felt her face heat up even more. Commander-in-Chief Xia saw this and laughed out loud. He teased, little Yi, you can't be so thin-skinned if you want to get along with sixth brother. Do you still remember what I said? She remembered everything and did not forget it. Yi Qian, whose face was burning red, nodded. I remember. I need to be more thick-skinned. That's right. Sixth brother's skin is known to be thick-skinned. If you want to subdue him, you need to train yourself to be more shameless than him. However, the two of you have your own way of getting along. I'm just giving you a suggestion. I don't know if it'll work. She wondered if being thick-skinned was hereditary. Yi Qian thought silently and felt a chill in her heart. How could she think like that? The person sitting next to her was the commander-in-chief. In front of you, looking at your military rank, I still don't dare to be presumptuous. Yi Qian knew that the commander-in-chief was teasing her because he saw through her restraint. Yi Qian pursed her lips and smiled gently. If I want to be on Captain Xia's level, I need to continue practicing. Commander-in-Chief Xia could tell that his future daughter-in-law was being reserved not because he was not friendly enough, but because she respected him from the bottom of her heart. He suddenly felt a headache coming on. If that's the case, we should still meet more often. Commander-in-Chief Xia was not just saying it. He was seriously considering it. Military Academy students will be assigned to the company to study during the second semester of their second year. Little Yi, why don't you come directly to the military to study? Yi Qian was shocked. To study. She hurriedly said, if I have time off in the future, I will definitely come to the capital to visit you. Then it's settled. The commander-in-chief laughed heartily. Even though he was wearing a military uniform, he still looked like an amiable elder. For some reason, Yi Qian had a feeling that the commander-in-chief had been waiting for her to say that. There was some distance between the Military Discipline Inspection Commission and the airport. The guard in the front passenger seat booked Yi Qian's flight for 2:00 p.m. Commander-in-Chief Xia looked at the time. It was only 11:00 p.m. He could still go to the airport for a light meal. Worried that the Yi family would be waiting for him, the commander-in-chief called the old housekeeper and asked him to tell old Master Xia and old Madam Xia that he would not be home for lunch. Yi Qian, who heard the commander-in-chief's call to the Yi family, sat up straight. He was afraid that he would make a noise. The old housekeeper would not ask about his master's itinerary in detail. Commander-in-Chief Xia saw that he agreed and ended the call. He continued to chat with Yi Qian about daily life and matters in the military. Although Yi Qian was a little reserved, she was not so reserved that she stuttered when she spoke. She was in awe of the commander-in-chief. She felt that she could express herself well. She spoke fluently and could answer any of the commander-in-chief's questions immediately. However, Commander-in-Chief Xia felt that she still had a lot of room for improvement. When the guard went to collect her plane ticket back to Nan Province, Commander-in-Chief Xia said earnestly, "Little Yi, you can be in awe of me in the military. But you don't have to be in real life. You can still talk back to Dad like sixth brother." Yi Qian, who almost couldn't hold her plane ticket properly, could only nod. Her back was sweating profusely. "Take care of yourself. I'll come back to visit you next time." Her heart's ability to withstand the pressure from the commander-in-chief increased. Chapter 2000. Uncle Chen felt that this was very good. From their conversation, it was clear that Commander-in-Chief Xia was very satisfied with Yi Qian. Commander-in-Chief is right. You have to respect him in the army and in your daily life, but you don't have to be afraid. Is there a need to be afraid when your family gets along well? After running around the capital, Yi Qian returned to the sniper base at 7:00 in the afternoon. She held a cup of hot water and told Principal Chin everything that Commander-in-Chief Xia had said to her. Principal Chin was very happy. Commander-in-Chief is Captain Xia's father and also your elder. His attitude is very important. He paused for a moment, then said meaningfully, "You're valued by Commander-in-Chief. Little Yi, you'll have someone to rely on in the future. Do you understand? Someone to rely on." But she had never thought of finding someone to rely on. She only wanted to rely on her own hard work to win everything. Yi Qian gently placed the cup on the table. There was a hint of doubt in her eyes. "Uncle Chen, are you saying that my mother's situation was actually all because of Commander-in-Chief Xia? Is that right? You can understand it that way." After having a heart-to-heart talk with Yi Qian last night, he found out that she still wanted to hide her situation from Captain Xia. She thought that it was her own problem and did not want to trouble Captain Xia. Principal Chen knew that he had to teach Yi Qian another side of her that no one knew, but everyone knew about. Yi Qian, who had heard Principal Chen say something like this for the first time, couldn't help but sit up straight. "Uncle Chen, don't tell me that my hard work today can't even compare to a relationship. A backer." There was a hint of anger in her calm tone. Why was she angry? Because she had lost too badly in her previous life. But she admitted it. Who asked her to be so useless? What if she lived a cowardly life? In this life, she had worked so hard with her life on the line. Did she still need a backer? In order to reach Uncle Chen's level of sniping, she carried more than 5 kilograms of weight on her hands. Even if she was so tired that she could not lift her arms, she would still grit her teeth and continue training the next day, just to be able to hold the sniper rifle steadily at any time and in any environment. In order to be able to figure out the model of the gun with her eyes closed and find the parts that truly belonged to this gun from a pile of parts, she could stay up all night just to reach Grandpa Jen's standard. In order to be able to react quickly, she listened to the bullets as they flew past her. She tried to find a way to survive the bullet's trajectory and avoid being hit by the bullet. In order to reach the peak of overall fitness, regardless of wind or rain, he never missed a day of training. He never raised his hand and said that he wanted to rest because he was tired. In order to become a qualified Special Warfare Special Forces soldier, she advanced and retreated together with the male soldiers. She could do what the male soldiers could do. Even if the male soldiers couldn't do it, she would still grit her teeth and complete it. Uncle Jen and Principal Chin had taught her that it was better to rely on herself than to rely on anyone else. She had been through a lot in her previous life, so she believed in their words and tried her best to only rely on herself. She did not want to rely on anyone. But now, Uncle Chin still told her how important it was to have a backer. Was it really that important? Faced with her doubts, Principal Chen was very certain. He also told Yi Qian in a realistic manner, "That's right, little Yi. In the future, you will have Commander-in-Chief Xia as your backer. Your future will be much smoother. I'm not saying that you don't have to do anything in the future. I'm just telling you that with Commander-in-Chief as your backer, some people will be afraid of you and won't make things difficult for you. But Uncle Chin only thinks that your future will be smoother. He doesn't think that you don't have to work hard anymore and completely rely on family Xia." Hearing this, Yi Qian suppressed the anger in her heart. Uncle Chin would not say such things to her for no reason. He must have his reasons. She had to listen carefully. Chapter 2001. She had to listen attentively. Otherwise, she would think that all her efforts were in vain. It would be easier to find a strong backer. Principal Chin saw that Yi Qian was unworthy, but he quickly controlled his anger and nodded in satisfaction. As a soldier, emotional fluctuations were the most taboo. After training for so long, if he got angry over a small matter, he would be severely punished. "I know why you are angry. You are angry because you don't understand why you work so hard, but it's not as good as having a reliable backer. What I want to tell you is that the reason Commander-in-Chief Xia values you and hopes that you and Captain Xia can become husband and wife is because he first saw your ability, and your potential. Uncle Chen is telling you the truth. You don't have ability, potential, or a certain level of charisma. First of all, Major Xia will not be attracted to you. What kind of person is Captain Xia? His family has power and influence, and he is outstanding and capable. He is worthy of being a young talent. Why would someone like him like a girl who came from the mountains? Why does Commander-in-Chief Xia value you? Uncle Chen said just now, it is also because of your ability, and potential. Why are you angry? And why are you angry? Girl, don't deny your hard work. You should think of it this way. It is because of your hard work that you are where you are today. It is because of Captain Xia that you have such an outstanding boyfriend, and it is because of Commander-in-Chief Xia that you have such an amiable elder. If you are a useless person with a smart brain but no clear goal, Uncle Chen is telling you, you will never be able to get the attention of Captain Xia, let alone Commander-in-Chief Xia. If you don't work hard enough and don't have the ability to be appreciated and praised, how can you get the attention of others? Principal Chen said with a very serious expression. He clearly told Yi Qian that there was no need for her to be angry. The reason why she found Commander-in-Chief Xia as her backer was not because of anything else, but because she worked hard enough and was outstanding enough. Yi Qian, who was listening intently, gradually understood. Just like today, when she walked out of the military commission building, she couldn't quite believe that the military commission had such a good attitude towards her. It didn't seem like they had come to the capital to investigate, but more like they wanted to chat with her. He also understood that Commander-in-Chief Xia was the reason why the Military Discipline Committee treated him so kindly. She had always wanted to rely on herself to find the truth, but the closer she got to the truth, the more she realized how realistic Uncle Jen's words were. Without enough foundation, how could they enter Captain Xiao's world? How could he gain the favor of Commander-in-Chief Xia? How could he shake a tree with deep roots and lush leaves? She was glad that she had the chance to be reborn. She was glad that she had listened to Uncle Jen and Uncle Chen's arrangement and put her hatred aside. She would only talk about revenge after she had gained a foothold. She was even more glad that she had met Uncle Jen, Uncle Chin, Lu Tuan, Political Commissar Yen. They had allowed her to not be blinded by hatred, and she had not been blinded by her past life. I understand what you mean. You are telling me that with Commander-in-Chief Xia as my backer in the future, I shouldn't relax because of this. Instead, I should work harder. That way, I won't let them down. The clear-minded Yi Qian didn't give Principal Chen a headache. He quickly understood his painstaking efforts. Yi Qian gazed at the elder who cared about and cherished him. He said softly, I won't embarrass the Commander-in-Chief. Chapter 2002. How could she disgrace the Commander-in-Chief? How could she disappoint the Commander-in-Chief? How could she disappoint her loved ones who cared about her? She lived for herself, but she also had to live for the people who cared about her and loved her. Living in this world, wasn't it all about fighting for one's dignity? She had lost so badly in her previous life, so she had to fight for her dignity in this life. She had to fight for all the dignity she had lost in her previous life. At the same time, she had to admit that it was because of her relationship with Captain Xia and Commander-in-Chief Xia that her mother's case could be brought up again. She didn't have to be angry because she was related. She should cherish it. Only when she knew how to cherish it would she know how important it was. She didn't get to where she was today because of connections. Just as Uncle Chin had said, if she didn't have enough ability, how could she have gotten Captain Xiao's attention? Her mother's case being taken seriously by the military commission was also related to her hard work. But before this, she really didn't think that she could wash away her mother's shame by making herself outstanding. Yi Qian smiled. Her fair face had this smile, like a white magnolia blooming in the spring rain. It had 9 petals and was as white as jade. Even if it was washed away, it was bright and beautiful. That was the smile of someone who had let go of all her worries. Her face was like a magnolia and her breath was like an orchid. Seeing this, Principal Chin knew that she understood his intentions, so he easily changed the topic. Tomorrow is the 2nd day of the Lunar New Year. A few soldiers want to go into the city for a walk. Also, Regiment Commander Liu and Political Commissar Yen called this morning and arranged to have dinner together tomorrow night. We'll leave together tomorrow morning and have fun for the day. After knowing that the Military Commission for Discipline Inspection had set up a special investigation team to investigate her mother's death, Yi Jian was indeed relieved. Hearing this, she said crisply, "Okay, I'll go with you when the time comes." Shopping was not a common occurrence for Yi Qian. As he walked into the largest department store in the southern province with a few other soldiers dressed in casual attire, Yi Qian, who rarely bought clothes, secretly calculated his allowance for the past few months of his military academy life, as well as his allowance for several missions. Then, he said to the soldiers beside him, "I'm going to the men's section in front for a while. You guys go ahead and have a chat with the chief instructor. Make sure he doesn't notice me leaving. It's not easy to hold the chief instructor back. You should end this quickly." The soldiers did not have the confidence to stall the chief instructor, who was revered by all the instructors in the sniper base, for a long time. But since the female soldier had said so, they must do it. Yi Qian smiled and said, "Thank you." Then, while Principal Chin wasn't paying attention, he hurriedly walked towards a high-end menswear section. She wanted to buy a woolen sweater for Principal Chin, and the money in her card was almost enough. The shopping mall on the 2nd day of the Chinese New Year was very quiet. Since it was the beginning of the year, the staff warmly received Yi Qian. Judging from Yi Qian's clothing and purchasing ability, the staff recommended a thin woolen sweater that cost about 800 yuan. Yi Qian took a fancy to a very thick, navy blue woolen sweater that cost double the price. After looking at the size, he immediately took a larger size and said, "This one will do. Help me check the bill." A woolen sweater that cost about 1,600 yuan was considered expensive. Yi Qian himself did not have such an expensive piece of clothing. The military provided clothing for all seasons of the year, so there was really no need to buy such expensive clothing. The staff was naturally very happy and immediately brought Yi Qian to the cashier to settle the bill. When they returned, Yi Qian heard a gentle but overbearing familiar voice. "I really like this one. Since you only have a larger size, give it to me first, and I can immediately pay you in cash. As for the customer who went to settle the bill, you can just explain that you found a flaw in the clothing. Wouldn't that be enough?" It was really familiar. So he had bumped into Ying, whom he had not seen in a long time. Chapter 2003. It had only been half a year since the end of the college entrance exam. Perhaps it had been too long since he last saw her, so it felt like a long time had passed. Yi Qian didn't want to make things difficult for himself during the new year, so he said to the attendant who accompanied him, "Can you help me take out the clothes?" "Thank you." The attendant heard the commotion inside and said awkwardly, Okay. I'll take it out right away." The attendant inside probably hadn't met such an unreasonable customer before. Although she was angry, she still explained to the young girl who had a good temperament and appearance. They always talked about harmony brings wealth. Besides, it was their first order this year. 2 Geely wouldn't make a fuss and ruin their year's fortune. Hello, I'm really sorry. This order is indeed booked. The customer just now checked that there was no problem before paying. We really can't do what you said. How about this? I'll recommend another one. The style, color, and quality are all similar to this one. The only difference is that it has a high collar. If it were any other person, they wouldn't make things difficult for the attendant. But Yi Ying wasn't an ordinary person. Since young, her biggest hobby was to steal things from others. Take Yang Heng for example. She knew that Yao Jing liked Yang Heng, but she still tried to get close to Yang Heng. She also promised Yao Jing that she didn't have any feelings for Yang Heng. This kind of person liked to make her presence known. She felt that everyone in the world should like her. Yi Ying loved to make things difficult for others. If she didn't get what she wanted, she would make everyone unhappy. Yi Qian, who didn't go in, raised his eyebrows. If Yi Ying really accepted the explanation, then she wouldn't be the Yi Ying he knew. As expected, he heard Yi Ying laugh arrogantly. Attendant, I'm talking to you nicely. Can't you understand? Do you only feel happy when I'm angry with you? She didn't know that Yi Qian was right outside. She looked at the waiter who was in a difficult position. Her eyes flashed with disdain as she raised her eyebrows and revealed a charming smile. I've taken the clothes and I've counted the money. It's up to you how to explain it to the customer. He opened the purple lacquer cover of an international luxury brand, took out a stack of money, and threw it on the counter. He looked at the anxious waiter with arrogant eyes. Okay, keep the change. Take it as my New Year's gift to you. Picking up the bag of clothes, Yi Ying chuckled softly. She was ready to leave in her high heels with a mature, seductive look. The waitress didn't dare to do that. She grabbed the money on the counter and hurried out of the counter. In a moment of desperation, she grabbed the shopping bag and begged with a smile, "Miss, it's really right." Before he could finish his sentence, the furious Yi Ying twisted the bag and flung it at the waiter's face. It was like a slap to the waiter's face. The waiter who was slapped in the face was stunned. He covered his face and couldn't believe that he was slapped while he was just doing his job. Yi Ying didn't expect to fling the bag at the waiter's face. However, it was impossible for her to apologize to a waiter. She immediately said coldly, "Why are you snatching it? The bag doesn't have eyes. Take your money." Chapter 2004. The waitress who came in to get the clothes saw the scene. Seeing her colleague being hit, her expression changed and she rushed in to stop Yi Ying who was about to leave. "What right do you have to hit someone? You're not allowed to leave. Hit someone." Yi Qian's eyes darkened. After studying abroad for half a year, not only did Yi Ying not change her temper, she became even more arrogant. Still not going in, Yi Qian looked around and waved to a staff member who heard the commotion and came over. Someone inside said that someone was hit. "Do you want to call security?" She was not a busybody, but she was not so cold as to stand by and do nothing when she saw someone being hit. When the staff member heard that someone was being hit, he quickly ran to the store he was in charge of and probably called security. Yi Ying thought that she had a good temper. Seeing that the waitress dared to stop her, she was angry and amused. "With your attitude, I'm going to complain to your manager right now. I'm here to buy clothes, not to be bullied." "What? I've already paid. Don't tell me you don't want to give me the goods. Also, who hit someone?" "It was this waitress who rushed over to take my stuff. I was just defending myself. What right do you have to say that I hit someone?" At the beginning of the year, there were not many customers in the clothing section of the 200 goods building. Everyone was a staff member. Hearing the commotion, the staff of the neighboring stores came over. The staff further away also came over to see what was going on. "You took our stuff by force. If we don't take it back, do you think we'll wait for you to take it back? The older waitress was not someone to be trifled with. She did not argue with Yi Ying and only spoke the truth. The other staff members who did not understand what was going on suddenly realized what was going on. They looked at her with disdain. Yi Ying, who was surrounded by people, felt embarrassed. She was even angrier. Call your manager over. I've already paid, but you don't want to give me the goods. I'm going to complain. The shop assistant who was hit was young, about 20 years old. Hearing this, she said with tears in her eyes, Miss, the clothes in your hand were obviously bought by another lady. She even went to the cashier to pay. You were the one who forcefully took it from me. Yi Qian frowned. Why did it feel like the clothes Yi Ying bought looked like the clothes she bought for Principal Qin? I forced it. Ha, you're still holding the money I gave you. Yi Ying glanced at the money in the waiter's hand. You can count how much I gave you. Seeing that you can't go home on New Year's Eve, I'm kind enough to tell you to keep the change for the rest of the money. Just treat it as a New Year gift. You're really something. How dare you accuse me of forcibly taking it from you? I gave you the money, so why can't you take what I bought? Is this a rule you set? Call your manager out. Yi Ying glared at the waiter who was still covering his face. She gritted her teeth and said, How dare you bully me? I'll make you regret it. Then she yelled at the waiter who was blocking her, How dare you stop me, you? Yi Ying's arrogant voice stopped abruptly as if she had been strangled. She looked as if she had seen a ghost as she stared at the figure standing at the door. Yi Qian did not want to interfere, but after watching for a while, he realized that he had no choice but to do so. Seeing that she saw him, Yi Qian took the receipt and walked to the waiter who was hit. He smiled and said, The money has been paid. Here's the receipt. Chapter 2005. The clothes were taken by force by this young lady. The waitress didn't dare to take the receipt that Yi Qian handed over, but the tears that she had been holding back burst out the moment Yi Qian spoke. Yi Qian would never make things difficult for others. He comforted the waitress who had been wronged, It's okay. Wait for your manager to come and deal with it. I'm not in a hurry. She was still a little anxious and would make Uncle Qin wait for a long time. She had to go and greet Uncle Qin first. As for the clothes, Yi Qian took the bag from Yi Ying's hand and walked over to Yi Ying, who was still glaring at him. He said calmly, The clothes in your hand were bought by me. You have to return them to me when the manager comes. Yi Qian didn't want to waste his breath on her. After he finished speaking, he didn't take the clothes from her hand. He walked past a certain someone whose face was pale and left to find Principal Qin. Stop right there. Yi Ying felt even more embarrassed when she thought that her humiliation might be seen by the person she hated the most. She didn't know where the anger in her heart came from, but it was rampaging in her heart. She didn't want to make things difficult for the waitress who made her unhappy. She grabbed the bag and rushed out to stop Yi Qian from leaving. The older waitress wouldn't let such a barbaric and unreasonable customer leave. She stopped her again, Young lady who hit someone, you have to wait for our manager to come. Get out of my way, do you hear me? Yi Ying, who lost her rationality every time she saw Yi Qian, wanted to throw the shopping bag in her hand again. Before she could do so, the older waitress shouted, Someone hit someone, someone hit someone. Quick, call the security guards. This shout made Yi Ying shiver. It also made her lose her rationality. She watched as Yi Qian left. She was so angry that she clutched the shopping bag tightly. She was so angry that she laughed coldly and said, Okay. I'll wait for your manager to come. This is your service. I've really learned something new. If she really threw the shopping bag, everyone would think that she hit someone. As the daughter of a provincial official, she couldn't leave any evidence that could be used against her. Yi Qian, who always liked to see her make a fool of herself, was also here. She couldn't let her make a fool of herself. Yi Ying, who had always cherished her reputation, could only fiercely suppress the anger in her heart. With a ruthless gaze, she bit her lower lip and looked at the departing figure, feeling vexed. I was indeed careless just now. I didn't control myself and accidentally hit the waiter's face. I don't know how much Yi Qian heard. Damn it, I've made a fool of myself again. Yi Zhifan had just parked the car when Sun Dongqing, who was about to get out of the car, received a call from her daughter. She said that she had been invited to the manager's office because she had bought a dress and paid for it, but the staff refused to let her leave. Hearing her daughter's voice, Sun Dongqing was furious. Don't be afraid, Ying. Mom is coming up now. He must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts to bully you. Yi Zhifan heard the gist of it. Based on his understanding of his daughter, he knew that things weren't that simple. However, he was indeed afraid that his daughter would be taken advantage of. With his daughter's temper, she definitely wouldn't cooperate. The mall's security guards didn't hold back. Yi Zhifan, who was a little anxious, warned Sun Dongqing, find out what's going on first. Don't mess around. The Sun Yaozu incident isn't over yet. The police already know about the relationship between our families. You'd better keep a low profile. Do you understand? Yi Zhifan was a little worried this year. The person who hadn't contacted him for a long time suddenly called on the night of the 30th. The first thing he said was he behind the Sun Yaozu incident? Yi Zhifan, who was driving to the airport to pick up his daughter, was so shocked that he slammed on the brakes. Chapter 2006. Luckily, there weren't any cars behind them, so it didn't cause a disaster. He didn't dare to pause and immediately replied, I don't have a motive to kill him. He only said one sentence before the person hung up. He calmed himself down and checked his phone. Just like before, the number was no longer in service. With that person's call, Yi Zhifan was still on tenterhooks. He was afraid that someone would tamper with his phone and put him on the list of suspects for Sun Yaozu's murder, causing that person to misunderstand. Sun Dongqing was honest when she heard that. She didn't dare to joke about her husband's future. She only nagged, I don't know what kind of person you're receiving. He insisted that Ying come over to buy clothes during the new year. Don't she have enough clothes in her suitcase? They're all branded goods. They're beautiful and fashionable. What's wrong with that? This child is impatient. She insisted on coming over to give you a surprise. All right, I didn't receive the surprise, but I did receive the shock. Yi Zhifan hated listening to her nagging the most. He heard her and said coldly, what kind of person is he? He's an important person that your Sun family can never hope to be associated with in your lifetime. Important person. Sun Dongqing laughed disdainfully. What kind of important person had she not met? She had even met the leader of the southern province and had even shaken hands with him. The deputy chief of staff Du is here with his wife. Do you think Ying needs to get a more dignified set of clothes? Yi Zhifan's face was cold the entire time. He didn't even look at Sun Dongqing and treated her like air. He didn't know how his daughter was doing in France. None of the clothes in the suitcase were presentable. They looked like they were exposing her arms and legs. Yi Zhifan's face turned uglier when he thought about those clothes. Sun Dongqing didn't care about her husband's attitude towards her. When she heard that, her eyes lit up. I know. You have to take it seriously. You have to take it seriously. Ying's wish was to enter the army so that she could teach that wretched girl, Yi Qian, a lesson. Now that she was in the way of such an important person, she had to take it seriously. If the wife of the deputy chief of staff wasn't here, do you think I would have brought you out? Yi Jifan glanced at his wife, who was incapable of accomplishing anything but good at ruining things. He pressed his lips together and quickly stepped into the elevator. As the couple went upstairs, Yi Qian was also found by the mall staff. The staff member who had been beaten up was sobbing softly and hoped that Yi Qian could go to the office. Principal Chen, who was buying some snacks with a few soldiers at the supermarket, saw this and lightly patted Yi Qian's head. I really shouldn't have brought you out. We ran into trouble the moment we came out. You're willing to buy clothes that cost more than 1,000 yuan, but I'm not willing to wear them. Forget it, it's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Give the clothes to that customer. Don't make things difficult for the waitress. If it were any other guest today, Yi Qian would definitely give in. But since it was Yi Ying, she was embarrassed. She did not want to give in. She smiled and said, "Why don't you take a stroll with them? I'll be right back." Principal Chen didn't know who Yi Qian had bumped into. Yi Qian could handle this kind of small matter himself, so he didn't ask much. He waved his hand and asked her to leave with the staff. The staff member who had been beaten up kept saying, "Thank you" all the way. She was very grateful that Yi Qian was willing to stand up for her at this time. In the manager's office, Yi Jifan smiled generously. It's not a big deal. We didn't need to trouble them all to step in. My daughter did accidentally hit the staff member just now. We should apologize. There's no need for the staff member to apologize. They're all young and impetuous girls. It's normal for them to quarrel. Chapter 2007. At this moment, Yi Ying was no longer as arrogant as before. She sat obediently and was as quiet as a flower in a greenhouse. The drastic change made the older waiter dumbfounded. "Director Yi, you're too polite. It's all because of our poor management that your daughter was wronged. How about this, the clothes can be considered as an apology from our department store. Please accept it, Director Yi." How could the mall manager not know the director of the Provincial Construction Bureau? Sometimes, the mall needed the approval of the Provincial Construction Bureau to make changes. He didn't dare to offend such a big shot, so he could only let the staff suffer. He then said to the older staff, "Go back and explain to the customers. You're lucky to have met Director Yi today. If it were someone else, they wouldn't be so nice." Sun Dongqing, who remembered this, touched the woolen sweater that her daughter bought to show her filial piety. The quality and color were okay. It was enough to be used as an apology. However, her daughter's grievance couldn't be overturned because of a sweater. "Manager, my husband thinks it's a small matter, but as her mother, I don't think it's a small matter. My daughter came here to spend money to buy clothes, not to be wronged. No apology. I won't accept it. Your two staff are so arrogant. You won't let my daughter leave. Do you think my daughter is easy to bully? She wouldn't let the two staff off easily." The mall manager could only ask his staff to apologize. Since ancient times, people don't fight with officials. The mall manager continued to smile and said, "You should apologize. You should apologize." He then said to his staff sternly, "What are you waiting for? Apologize to the director's daughter." The older staff had to apologize even if she didn't want to. If she didn't apologize, her salary and bonus would be deducted a lot. Yi Ying looked at the staff in front of her. She didn't hide the contempt in her eyes. "Weren't you fierce just now? You said I hit someone. Now you're still saying I hit someone." The staff was in her early 30s. In the face of power, she had to bow her head. She swallowed her anger and said, "My attitude was bad just now. I'm sorry. I won't argue with you if your attitude was bad. But you said I hit someone. Tell me, did I hit someone? Ying didn't let it go. How dare you embarrass me? You should take a look at yourself first. A knock on the door interrupted Yi Qian's words. The mall manager said, "Please come in." The office door was pushed open. The security guards and the waitress with red eyes invited Yi Qian in first. Yi Ying was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on when she entered the room. She stood up from the solid wooden sofa and lost the elegance that she had deliberately put on. Her almond eyes widened as she stared at Yi Qian. Sun Dongqing's reaction was the same. She stood up abruptly. Just as she was about to question Yi Zhifan, she heard a light call from Yi Zhifan, which made her swallow back the words that had rushed to her throat. He had almost forgotten that this wretched girl was no longer the same as before. Endure, I have to endure. Now, even old Yi was afraid of the wretched girl and didn't dare to confront her directly. He, who had been strangled by her once, had to endure it even more. He couldn't scold her directly like before. If he wanted to scold her, he could only scold her in his heart. Why is she here? Do you want to work during the winter break? Old Yi, every time that wretched girl shows up, our whole family feels uncomfortable. Sun Dongqing muttered. She stared nervously at Yi Qian as she walked in. She was afraid that she would do something bad to her family. Yi Zhifan didn't pay attention to what she said. When he saw Yi Qian walk in, his gaze fell on the shopping bag with the woolen sweater. He had a bad feeling. Chapter 2008. A bad premonition flashed through his mind. He immediately stood up and said to the mall manager, "I won't disturb Manager Xiang's work. You don't have to give us the woolen sweater. It should belong to whoever bought it." At the same time, he used his eyes to warn Sun Dongqing to shut up. The young salesperson who went directly to Yi Qian to testify did not understand what was going on. She held back her grievances and said timidly, "Manager, this customer bought the clothes first. Sister Fan took her to pay for it, and I stayed in the store to pack it up. Then, this customer came in and took a fancy to this design. She said she wanted an extra large size. I said, I'm sorry, the last extra large size has just been bought. The customer has already gone to the cashier to pay for it. I didn't have a bad attitude. I even explained to her, but this lady didn't listen. She threw the money on the cashier, took the bag and left. I didn't dare to let her go. In a moment of desperation, I grabbed the bag." She recounted the entire incident, including how Yi Ying slapped her in the face with the bag. In the end, she looked at Yi Qian and said softly, "This customer can testify." "Manager, I really didn't do anything else." Sun Dongqing, whose expression had changed, suddenly exploded. She had said bad things about Yi Ying in front of Yi Qian. She had to endure it again and again. Now, she wanted Yi Qian to testify. Was she trying to trample her daughter to death? She did not dare to make a scene in front of Yi Qian. She rushed out and shouted at the young salesperson, "You're so young and your mouth is full of shit. You'll spit on whoever you catch. Tell me, who told you to do it? If you don't give me an explanation, don't even think about leaving today." Although she did not dare to make a scene in front of Yi Qian, her words were directed at Yi Qian. She was the wife of a provincial official. Her words were so vulgar that the manager, who had been apologizing, could not help but frown. Yi Qian did not want to talk to her, knowing that she was directed at him. The Yi family was just a grasshopper after autumn. They would not be able to jump around for long. She simply said to the manager, "I need to take the clothes I bought. May I ask, where are my clothes?" Sorry, she was petty. If Yi Ying wanted to snatch it from her, she would give in to anyone but Yi Ying. Hearing that Yi Qian was going to take the clothes away, Yi Ying couldn't take it anymore. I've already paid for the clothes. Do you dare to take them? If she wasn't satisfied, then that bastard Yi Qian wouldn't be satisfied either. Yi Ying did not kick up a fuss. She stood beside her mother and said coldly, I've already paid the waiter. I've also paid the waiter. Yi Qian, do you dare? Why wouldn't I dare to take what I bought? Yi Qian sneered and looked at the other party as if he was looking at an idiot. He placed the shopping bag beside him and calmly walked past the mother and daughter who were at daggers drawn. He opened the bag naturally and took out the clothes for a look. Yes, this is it. She nodded slightly to the manager and left with the clothes. When Yi Ying saw that Yi Ying did not take her seriously, a nameless fire burned in her heart. Yi Qian, if you dare to walk out of here, I'll teach you a lesson. The loud shout startled the manager of the shopping mall and the two waiters. They looked back and forth and didn't say anything. They all had the surname Yi and were acquaintances. With Yi Qian's arrival, the fuse was no longer on the waiters. Instead, it was on Yi Qian. In the face of Yi Ying's anger, Yi Qian only responded to her with a look of disdain. He did not even want to say a single word to her. Look good. She had said the same thing countless times, but what could he do? Chapter 2009. That was all. He didn't dare to do what he said. He didn't even have the courage to face it. He only knew how to talk. The more he talked, the more people looked down on him. Yi Qian's expression successfully angered Sun Dongqing. She couldn't stand her daughter being bullied. In her eyes, her precious daughter was being bullied by Yi Qian. She had completely forgotten Yi Jifan's warning. She looked at Yi Qian walking past her. Her round but mean face showed a sharp ruthlessness. When Yi Qian reached the door, she seemed to have a plan. Her eyes flashed with viciousness. Before the door closed, she gritted her teeth and said gloomily, Ying, we should go too. She didn't respect their family at all. It was too infuriating. If she didn't teach her a lesson, she wouldn't be able to swallow the anger in her heart. Yi Ying seemed to understand her mother's intention. She quickly said, I still want to buy some clothes. Mom, let's go to the women's section. She grabbed Sun Dongqing's arm and hurriedly left. She didn't even dare to look back at Yi Jifan. After the mother and daughter left, Yi Jifan said to the manager, Sorry for the disturbance. I hope this incident didn't affect the shopping mall. I also hope you don't have to punish the two employees. It's not easy. Let's both take a step back. Once we leave this door, forget about this incident and pretend it never happened. There was a hint of warning in his words. The manager nodded as he walked them out. Yes, yes, yes. We'll remember what Director Yi said. It's a small matter. Yi Jifan didn't want the manager to walk him out. He walked to the door and said, You don't have to walk me out. I'll accompany the mother and daughter to walk around. The manager, who had cold sweat on his back, didn't dare to disobey, but he also didn't dare to not walk them out. He only said, I'm going to the mall to do something. It's on the way. He waved from behind and signaled for the two attendants to come out and walk them out. Yi Jifan, who was used to being flattered, didn't say anything else. He chatted with the manager about the people's livelihood and walked out together. When Yi Jifan reached the corridor of the shopping mall, he saw the scene that he didn't want to see the most. He saw Sun Dongqing suddenly speed up and slam into Yi Qian's back. He was a little far away, so he didn't hear Sun Dongqing's clever remark, a good dog doesn't block the way. Yi Qian, who was trained as a special forces soldier, could easily deal with her. When she felt something strange on her back, she nimbly turned sideways and extended her leg slightly. Trying to harm her. Have a good taste of what it feels like to eat your own medicine. Several mall staff members on duty and a cleaner saw a slightly fat woman in luxurious clothes fall down like a piece of fat meat from a sticky board. With a dull thud, the woman fell to the ground. When the manager who came out to send them off saw this, he wanted to slap himself twice. What's there to give? Another big gift had been given out. He saw with his own eyes that the director's wife had tried to harm him but failed. Instead, she had harmed herself. Why was he so unlucky? The mall manager didn't know what kind of expression he should use to face Director Yi. Yi Qian, who was on his side, glanced down at Sun Dongqing who had fallen by his feet. It must have been a hard fall. She must be in a daze. She raised her eyes and glanced at Yi Jifan, who was walking over with a dark expression, from a certain distance away. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile that made Yi Jifan's heart sink. Before he could understand what he meant, Yi Qian had already turned around and walked away from Sun Dongqing, who hadn't moved since the fall. Chapter 2010. Yi Ying, who had watched her mother fall, was so angry that her liver hurt. She yelled, "Yi Qian," at the departing figure. Her Yi Qian drowned out all her anger, but there was nothing she could do. Why was she angry? The reason was simple. She wanted to deal with Yi Qian, but she didn't have the ability to do so. She could only hold it in. No matter how angry Yi Ying was, she didn't dare to chase after him. Her mother had fallen for a long time without a sound. How could she leave her mother behind and chase after him? She had to take care of her mother first. Yi Jifan's face was livid. He didn't want to embarrass his family any further. He quickly walked over and suppressed his anger. He bent down and said something that sounded like he was worried, but was actually a warning. "You can't even walk properly. I don't think you should go out with my daughter in the future." The two waiters wanted to laugh, but when they saw the manager's panicked look, they quickly went over and pretended to be concerned. "Are you okay? Did you fall anywhere? Do we need to call an ambulance?" No, she's probably just scared." "Call an ambulance." Did they think the situation wasn't serious enough? Yi Jifan directly refused and said to Yi Ying, "Go get a cup of hot water. It's quite scary to fall so suddenly." Sun Dongqing was indeed a little dazed from the fall. She wanted to get up and rush out to cause trouble for Yi Qian, but she was shocked by Yi Jifan's words. Someone once told her that if a man was willing to take you out to socialize, it meant that he still treated you as his wife. If a man didn't want to take you out to socialize and didn't divorce you, it meant that he already treated you as a free nanny. This sentence suddenly appeared in her mind. Sun Dongqing, who felt that she had lost a lot of face, pretended to faint. The mall manager was as anxious as a cat on a hot tin roof. When he saw that Yi Jifan was determined to leave without anyone's help, he turned around and scolded the two waiters. Then, he quickly contacted the mall manager to find out how to apologize. When the mall manager heard that he had offended Director Yi of the Provincial Construction Bureau, he was so scared that he almost fainted. He didn't dare to hide the matter and continued to report it to his superiors. When the whole thing reached Ho Zi, who was playing chess with Master Xia, she replied disapprovingly, "So be it. What's there to be afraid of?" Since the big boss had said so, the people below all heaved a sigh of relief. This matter had turned a page in the mall, and no one would mention it again. On the other hand, Yi Jifan went home and threw a tantrum for a long time. The mother and daughter were so scared that they sat on the sofa and hugged each other. If it weren't for the Deputy Chief of Staff Du's call, he would probably have scolded them for a few hours. "We're having dinner with the Deputy Chief of Staff Du tonight. If you two don't take your brains with you, Yi Ying, you can forget about entering the army for the rest of your life." Yi Jifan, who had been talking to Yi Ying amiably a moment ago, immediately changed his expression after hanging up the phone. He scolded Yi Ying angrily, "This is your last chance. If you make another stupid mistake, you'll die because of your own stupidity. You can't blame anyone else." Yi Qian, who was not affected at all, had already checked into the Caesar Hotel with Principal Chin. His comrades who came out with him took a car back to the sniper base. Yi Qian still needed to have dinner with Commander Liu and Political Commissar Yen at night, and it might be a little late, so he could only go to the Caesar Hotel to rest for another night. At night, he took a taxi to the appointed place. Principal Chin looked at the lively restaurant and couldn't help but laugh. "This place is lively. I think only this place is lively." "That's right. It's an old restaurant in the southern province. Their blood duck is the best. It's even been on the newspaper." Commander Liu and Political Commissar Yen must have booked it at least a month or two in advance. Yi Qian, who was in a good mood, replied with a smile. He was led by the waiter to the reserved room. Chapter 2011. At 7:00 in the evening, Lu Tuan and Commissar Yen arrived on time. They didn't drink, so they ordered a pot of biluakan and chatted happily while eating the restaurant's specialty spicy dishes. Yi Qian, who was originally in a good mood, was now a little down. Lu Tuan had already chosen to transfer. After all his work was handed over, he took off his military uniform and left. Commissar Yan's transfer order had already been issued before the new year. After the 15th day of the first month, he would be assigned to the Linchuan military district. This meal was actually a farewell meal. Yi Qian ate it a little tasteless. "The three of us have known each other for 10 years. When I was first transferred to Fujian town, the person who received me was not the previous regiment commander, but Old Chin. At that time, Old Chin had only been in Fujian town for 2 years. Lu Tuan sipped the fragrant hot tea. His face, which had already weathered the hardships of life, was filled with deep memories of the past. He sighed and said, "Time really flies. In the blink of an eye, 10 years have passed. Too fast, too fast. Now that I think about it, it seems like it was yesterday." "Old Chin, you were wearing a set of old Chinese clothes and holding 2 textbooks in your hands. Your hair was still covered in dust when you hurriedly appeared in front of me. You immediately apologized and said that you forgot the time in class. At that time, I was extremely puzzled. I thought that the army should have sent a soldier to bring me into the mountains. Who knew that a teacher would come?" Fujian Town High School was the oil depot transfer point for the logistics of fuel supply from the north to the south. Its importance was self-evident. As the guard of the oil depot, Principal Chin naturally needed to meet the newly appointed regiment commander immediately. At that time, a teacher had something to do and asked for leave. He took over the class. When he arrived, Regiment Commander Liu had already arrived. Recalling the past, Principal Chin sighed and said, "Yes, not long after I picked you up, Old Yen also arrived. I still remember that the two of you always had different opinions on how to manage the army. As a teacher, I had to run into the mountains every few days to adjust. After about half a year, the two of you should take a break. And Uncle Jen, he also often advised the two of you. There was a time when he got angry. At that time, Uncle happened to be teaching the new recruits how to use guns. When he heard that the two of you were making trouble again, he immediately carried a Type 81 automatic rifle and rushed in. He put the gun on the table and said angrily, 'Do you two have to make trouble until one of you has to be killed? All right, I'll grant you your wish. Rock, paper, scissors, we'll decide the winner in 1 round.' The past was still vivid in his mind, but Uncle Jen, who had taught them a lesson, had already passed away. Lu Tuan, who came from the Lost Plateau and had a body of iron and steel, wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. He sighed heavily, and there was a deep sense of melancholy. He forced a smile on his face and continued Principal Chen's words. Later, I told old Yen that a first-class soldier, Zhang Chongwei, was indeed different from normal people. He even played rock, scissors, and paper, treating us like 3-year-olds. Old Yen replied coldly, in his eyes, "Aren't you and I just 3-year-old children?" I was happy when I heard that. After that, I never argued with old Yen again. Even if there was a dispute, it would be silently resolved behind the back of the cadre. I'm a northerner. I'm rough and straightforward. Old Yen is a southerner. He's meticulous and annoying when he talks in a roundabout way. Ha ha ha. At that time, we were so annoyed that I couldn't wait to go to the military and argue with him. I wanted to transfer him away so that he wouldn't be a hindrance in front of me. Political Commissar Yan's eyes were also a bit wet. When he lowered his head to drink tea, he secretly raised his hand to wipe the corners of his eyes. Then, he looked at Commander Lu with a face of disgust. Same to you. At that time, I thought that if I didn't get rid of a rough person like you who came from God knows where, my surname wouldn't be Yen. Chapter 2012. In the end, Uncle Jen threw the gun in front of me. I was terrified. I immediately apologized to him and promised that I wouldn't make a fuss again. Young and hot-blooded, young and hot-blooded. Suddenly, the topic turned to Yi Qian. If we were as old as you back then, we wouldn't have argued for half a year. We wouldn't have troubled Uncle Jen and Old Chen to worry about us from time to time. Yi Qian, who had been quietly watching them reminisce about the past, sniffed lightly and said softly with some sadness, "It's because of your education that I'm more mature. If it weren't for your guidance, there wouldn't be the Yi girl today." Your nose is blocked. Are you crying? Political Commissar Yen quickly picked up a piece of bloody duck and placed it in Yi Qian's bowl. He smiled gently. You didn't rely on others to get to where you are today. Most importantly, you relied on yourself. You can only rely on yourself. Relying on others is like the moon in the water. It will be shattered in the blink of an eye. Yi Qian, you are doing very well now. In the future, you will be like this. The military is the best home for you. The military couldn't bear to let go of good seedlings, especially a comprehensive talent like Yi Qian. They could keep her for a lifetime. Commander Lu also said, Old Yen is good at talking. His words are beautiful and pleasant to listen to. I'll be direct. Yi Qian, since you have chosen this path, you must be ruthless when it's time. As a soldier, there is no reason for you to be soft. You wear the military uniform and shoulder the responsibility, so you must be ruthless. When it comes to military matters, you must be ruthless. There is no need to be long-winded. If anyone dares to doubt you, fine. They can doubt you, but they must find a reason to convince you. Okay, we will treat it as listening. If you are angry, you can go wherever you want to go. If you don't have the ability and still want to shoulder the responsibility, let's just send him away. Don't pretend to be a big shot in front of you. Yi Qian listened attentively and remembered everything. Political Commissar Yen was gentle, while Commander Lu was strict. The combination of strength and gentleness could make soldiers obey you while also admiring you from the bottom of their hearts. When Platoon Leader Lu was promoted from the Deputy Platoon Leader to the Platoon Leader, what he said was the most authentic experience. This was of great help to Yi Qian when he later joined the field forces to lead troops. Principal Chin knew that Yi Qian wasn't feeling too good, but he didn't say anything. It was normal for soldiers to come and go like this. She had to get used to it. They had known each other for 10 years, and now they had gone their separate ways. This meal was destined to be somewhat sorrowful. Yi Jian silently refilled the cups of hot tea for the 3 veterans who had dedicated their best years to the army. Then, she sat down quietly and listened to them talk about their shared past. Perhaps their open-mindedness had infected her. The sadness of parting gradually faded away, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Although they had parted, they were still good friends and confidants. One day, they would meet again. Tomorrow night, I still need to accompany the leader who came today to inspect the motor vehicle training base. Tonight, we will be dismissed. When it was 9 o'clock, Political Commissar Yen saw that it was getting late. He picked up Yi Qian's cup of hot tea and stood up. He said to Principal Chen, "Old Chen, I won't say goodbye to you on the day I leave. This cup of tea is a toast to you for supporting my work for the past 10 years. Old Chen, I also toast to you for not being scared away by my temper." Commander Lu laughed heartily as he picked up his cup and stood up. He then said to Yi Qian, "Little girl, Commander Lu also toasts to you for your bright future and your meteoric rise." Chapter 2013. After drinking this cup of tea, it was time to say goodbye. Yi Qian felt his hand trembling as he held the teacup. Come. Drink, drink. Little Yi, I don't know when we will meet again after this. I also respect your bright future and your meteoric rise. Using tea as a substitute for wine, Political Commissar Yen was the first to drink. When he put down the teacup, his hand was also trembling slightly. He didn't know when they would meet again after this farewell. How could he not be sad? Seeing his old partner turn his head to wipe his tears again, Commander Lu patted his shoulder hard and joked, "Every time we send off the retired soldiers, you cry the most. You make me cry with you. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be scolded for being cold-blooded. You still have to meet the Deputy Chief of Staff due tomorrow. Take it easy. Don't go with your leader with red and swollen eyes tomorrow." At the mention of the Deputy Chief of Staff due, Commander Lu's face suddenly darkened. He asked Political Commissar Yen, "Old Yen, before you left, did you hear clearly who the Deputy Chief of Staff due was talking to? Who was he talking to?" Political Commissar Yen gulped down a mouthful of cold water to calm himself down. After thinking for a while, he said, "At that time, you were the closest to the Deputy Chief of Staff due. I was behind you, so I didn't hear clearly." On the other side, Yi Qian frowned slightly. Deputy Chief of Staff due. His surname was Due. There was only one Chief of Staff with the surname Due. Moreover, he and this person's daughter had a grudge that was neither too big nor too small. "Little Yi, I'm afraid that Yi Jifan hasn't given up on sending Ying into the army. He might have formed a relationship with the Due family." Commander Lu, who had a serious expression, thought carefully again. He still believed that he didn't hear wrongly. It should be his wife who called. "I heard the words old Yi Jifan. There's a high chance that it was Yi Jifan." It wasn't a high chance, it was a fact. Unexpectedly, the leader accompanying Captain Lu and Political Commissar Yen was the Deputy Chief of Staff. Yi Qian had no intention of telling them that he already knew about Yi Jifan's relationship with the Due family. He smiled and said, "It's okay. Yi Ying has wanted to join the army for a long time. If she can really join the army, it means that the Deputy Chief of Staff Due." There was no need for Yi Qian to finish his sentence. From Commander Lu and Political Commissar Yan's furrowed brows, they knew what he wanted to say. "If that's the case, then we really need to stay away from them," Lu Tuan said in a low voice and immediately reminded Political Commissar Yen, "Old Yen, you have to be careful. Don't get involved in his schedule in the southern province or who he is meeting in the next few days. Don't leave any evidence behind in the future." As for Commander-in-Chief Xia, you can look for the brigade commander and tell him about this. Political Commissar Yen nodded with a sullen face. I'll keep an eye on it. It's really shameful that a person who has heart disease and framed his classmates can still enter the army. Remember it in your heart, but don't show it on your face. Lu Tuan was about to retire, so the matters in the army had nothing to do with him. However, he was still worried about his partner of 10 years. Stay away from them. Don't get too close, in case you hear something you shouldn't. Everyone was about to leave, but the Deputy Chief of Staff Duke sat down again and talked for more than 10 minutes before they left. Not only did Commander Lu know about the meeting between the Deputy Chief of Staff Du and Yi Jifan, but Xia Yiwei, who was far away in Beijing, also knew about it immediately. Okay, help me keep a close eye on them and remember what they say. I'll contact you when I come back. Xia Yiwei instructed in a low voice. Her mature and charming face was cold. She added, don't let them find out. Just remember what's important. Chapter 2014. On the other side, Yi Jifan and the Deputy Chief of Staff Du were chatting happily after 3 rounds of drinks and 5 dishes. The person who was talking to Xia Yiwei turned his head and looked at the private room behind him. He nodded gently and said, okay, don't worry, Secretary Xia. I'll contact you again if there's anything. Xia Yiwei looked up at the man who was still playing chess with the old man in the tea room. She murmured, and hung up the phone. She didn't know what the old man was up to. He usually played chess to relieve boredom, and it was about once a week. This time, after the New Year's Eve dinner on New Year's Eve, the old man asked Ho Zi to play chess with him. It was the same on the first day of the new year, and it was the same on the second day of the new year. Except for the meal, the rest of the time was spent playing chess. What surprised her even more was that Ho Zi, a guy who was not stingy, actually had such good patience to play chess with the old man. The old man didn't speak while playing chess, and he wouldn't talk to him even if they fought for the whole morning. He could endure it. She let a man who wanted to find something to do in his spare time accompany the old man to play chess after dinner, eat after chess, and not talk after dinner. Xia Yiwei looked at the man sitting cross-legged again, and then looked at the old man with white hair. Forget it, she'd better talk with the old lady. Family Xia was a big family. The old man, Xia Yinkue, was born in a prominent family, and his ancestors were officials for generations. The old lady, Su Rong, was a famous daughter of a scholarly family in the capital. Although her ancestors were not as good as family Xia's, at that time, the Su family had a daughter and everyone wanted her. The old lady had a total of 4 sons and 1 daughter. Except for Xia Yiwei's father, old lady Su's second son, Xia Anbang, who died in the line of duty, the other 3 sons and 1 daughter were all promising. Every new year, the quiet old house of family Xia was the liveliest. The younger generation of the family rushed back to the old house to accompany the old man and the old lady to celebrate the new year. However, there were also those who couldn't come back, such as Xia Jinyuan and the others. Most of the younger generation of the family had joined the army and were scattered all over China. It was normal to not see them once a year. For people with family separation, it was normal for them not to see each other for a few years. When Xia Yiwei came over, his elder brother, Xia Lingshao, mentioned his 6th son, Xia Jinyuan. Come to think of it, I haven't seen him in 4 years. I thought I would be able to meet him this time and see what the famous devil of the family has become. Who would have thought that I wouldn't have the chance? Big brother, you haven't seen 6th brother for 4 years. I haven't seen 6th brother for about 4 years as well. A slightly older man with an imposing bearing peeled an orange as he lamented, back then, 6th brother told me that he wanted to apply for the military academy. I was so shocked. Even the devils incarnate wanted to apply for the military academy. Big Family Xia Incident. The one who spoke was Xia Jinyuan's third brother, who was engaged in missile research and development. He was a military engineer working somewhere in the northwest of China. He was transferred to the northwest and didn't return home for 4 years. He didn't even call home for 4 years. It wasn't until a certain missile was successfully developed and mass-produced that he got a 1-month leave to visit his family. Xia Jinyuan's eldest brother had also joined the army. He was the eldest son of his uncle, Xia Onghua. He was 41 years old this year and was now a brigade commander. Unlike the eldest son of the deputy chief of staff Du Kaiwei, the fourth son of the family Xia Yiwei's elder brother, Xia Yujing, was 36 years old this year. He was also serving in a brigade in the Nongguang military region. He was also a regiment commander, but his military rank was 1 level higher than Du Kaiwei's. He was a colonel. Fortunately, they all wore casual clothes during the new year. Otherwise, it would be scary to see a room full of military uniforms and military ranks. Chapter 2015. Xia Yiwei came in and was welcomed by everyone. They all asked her to sit down quickly. Come, Yiwei, sit next to Big Brother. How can Yiwei sit still? She's afraid that old master will make things difficult for her boyfriend. Xia Junbai, the cousin of family Xia's ancestral home, teased. He was here to pay a New Year's visit. He was the vice captain of a certain warship and was the only Navy member in the entire family Xia. Xia Yiwei was the only daughter of the Xia family, and she was not young anymore. Yet, she only brought home a boyfriend with a devilish aura this year. Old Mr. Xia was very worried and had to test him. I'm not afraid that old master will make things difficult for him. I'm just worried that he will make old master upset. It's the new year. I don't want him to make things difficult for the family. Xia Yiwei saw that old madam and Aunt Xia Sujuan were not around. She sat down and asked, "Where are old madam and aunt?" In the flower room, Auntie Xiao said that the hexagonal red flower had bloomed. Old madam happily pulled my mother over. I have to thank the camellias for blooming in time, allowing me to be free for a while. A girl who was about 23 or 24 years old said with a smile as she winked at Xia Yiwei, as if she was trying to convey a message. A handsome young man sitting next to her raised his hand and gave her a light smack on the head. He smiled and said, "Behave yourself. If mom doesn't see you when she comes back, she'll have a hard time." The man's words filled the room with laughter. Old Master Xia had 4 sons and 1 daughter. He didn't have many grandsons, granddaughters, and maternal grandsons. There were only 9 of them in total. He had 6 grandchildren. Xia Jinyuan was the youngest, and his grandson, Zhou Yichen, was not included. He only had 1 granddaughter, Xia Yiwei, and 1 granddaughter, Zhou Yijin. This year, when they returned to the ancestral home for the new year, except for Xia Jinyuan and Xia Yujing, the rest of the grandchildren gathered together. It was very lively. Zhou Yijin, who had been knocked on the head by her older brother, glared at them in dissatisfaction. She snorted and ate the melon seeds even faster. "You don't go out and cause trouble for your mother." That Du Jiayi only said a few words about others. "What are you angry about?" "You've been angry from the eve of the Lunar New Year to the 2nd day of the Lunar New Year. You're really petty." Zhou Yichen bluntly exposed his sister's shortcomings in front of his cousins. He was a teacher in the command school and had an elegant temperament. When he spoke, he was neither hurried nor slow and had a sense of rhythm. "Don't you already know what kind of person she is? What's wrong with letting her say a few words? It's not your business anyway." "How is it not my business? She insulted my good friend, Wei Jieyue. How can I not be angry? That treacherous, cunning, hypocritical, pretentious and hateful woman. Just looking at her makes me sick." After saying that, she even made a gesture of vomiting. Her girlish behavior made Xia Yiwei and the others not know whether to laugh or cry. Among the siblings, Zhou Yijin was actually the youngest. At that time, no matter how much of a jerk Xia Jinyuan was, he had never bullied her. When she graduated from university at the age of 22, she signed up for the army behind her aunt's back. She did not rely on her family's connections and was assigned to the Nongguang military region with her good friend, Wei Jieyue. She entered the telephone company, and Wei Jieyue entered the arts regiment. They knew the relationship between family Xia and the Du family. Now that Du Jiayi was mentioned, they naturally helped Zhou Yijin. The second son, Xia Yiding, smiled and said, "Do you want to ask Brother Yujing to transfer you out of the Nongguang military region? So that you won't be angered by Du Jiayi." Chapter 2016. The reason why family Xia was able to become the most influential family in the capital was because everyone in the family was very united and never did anything that would harm the family. Just like the Du family, who did not dare to openly fight with family Xia, they would play some tricks from time to time to make things difficult for family Xia. However, those little tricks were all unpresentable. No wonder family Xia looked down on them. Although Zhou Yijin's surname was Zhou, half of her blood came from family Xia. Like all family Xia's people, she was born with a rebellious nature. Hearing this, she wrinkled her nose and said, "Why should I leave? If anyone has to leave, it should be her. I don't want to trouble Brother Yujing. Let's not talk about her. Let's not talk about her. Let's talk about Sister Iwei's boyfriend and Brother Jinyuan's girlfriend. Yesterday, I secretly heard third uncle say that he went to meet Brother Jinyuan's girlfriend. Old madam even complained that third uncle didn't bring her granddaughter-in-law back. The 24-year-old girl grew up in a good family environment. While she was mature, she still maintained a pure and kind heart. The words she spoke to her family were full of a little girl's naivety. Xia Yiwei picked up an orange from the fruit plate on the coffee table and threw it into her arms with a smile. "What do you want to know? Did the little girl also fall in love with him? Do you want to bring a boyfriend home for us to meet? Sister Yiwei, you are my target." Zhou Yijin, who caught the orange quickly, raised her eyebrows playfully. She waved the yellow fruit in her hand and smiled brightly. "When the time comes, I would like to ask Sister Yiwei how to be single for so many years." "How dare you make fun of your Sister Yiwei? You really need to be taught a lesson. Jin, it's not that scary to piss off your mother. It's scary to piss off Queen Wei." Zhou Yijin returned a look that said, "I'm not afraid." Then, she immediately stood up and handed the cut orange to Xia Yiwei. She held Xia Yiwei's arm and smiled sweetly. "Sister Yiwei, tell me about Brother Jinyuan's girlfriend. Third uncle must be very satisfied with her. Otherwise, how could he tell old madam that it's better to wait for sixth brother to come back and not scare her away?" Everyone was interested in sixth brother Xia Jinyuan's girlfriend. As the only one who knew a little about it, Xia Yiwei became the focus of attention. Xia Yiwei, who was elegantly tidying her hair, looked at the burning gazes. She curved her lips slightly, revealing an intellectual and dignified smile. "You're a pretty good girl, Yijin. If I hand you over to sixth brother's girlfriend, you'll be reborn within 3 months and become the pride of your parents." The eldest brother, Xiao Lingshao, was rather interested. Originally, he only wanted to know if the relationship between the two of them was okay. Now that he heard the arrogant Xia Yiwei praising Yi Jian, Xiao Lingshao was interested in Yi Jian herself. What kind of girl is she? Xia Yiwei didn't mind putting in a few good words for Yi Qian in front of his family. It didn't matter whether he said it or not. As long as they met Yi Qian, especially his brothers who were soldiers, they would definitely admire Yi Qian. A girl who can catch sixth brother's eye. Brother, what do you think? She's a very good girl. She's skilled, talented, and beautiful. She's talented, beautiful, and skilled. Sixth brother has good taste. You've got a treasure. This was a very high evaluation. The men of family Xia sat up slightly. As the eldest brother, Xiao Lingshao smiled and said, "Our queen of family Xia has never praised another person of the same gender. It seems that sixth brother's girlfriend is really good." Chapter 2017. Xia Yiwei liked Yi Qian's unpretentious personality. When asked by his family, he always gave her high praise. He nodded affirmatively and answered the most authoritative elder brother of his generation, "Yes, she's not bad. You'll know when old Six brings her back." Zhou Yijin was shocked. "No way, she's younger than me. And she's a military school student. If she's coming over, shouldn't I stay away from her? I'll find a way to catch you and make you learn from old Six's girlfriend," Zhou Yichen said with a smile. His elegant voice was filled with savagery. "You'll be so ashamed that you'll wish you were human again." The conversation between the two siblings made everyone laugh. The servants in the old mansion heard their master's laughter and couldn't help but smile. When Yi Qian returned to the hotel, he was called over by Principal Qin for a talk. Seeing Principal Chen's serious expression, Yi Qian felt a little scared. Just now, Lu Tuan mentioned that Yi Zhifan has a relationship with the Deputy Chief of Staff Du Little Yi. You seem to have known about this for a long time. When did you find out? Principal Chen asked as he sat on the sofa. His voice was very deep, which made Yi Qian's heart beat faster. She didn't know when she had angered Principal Chen, but after thinking about it, it didn't seem to be the case. In the hospital, Captain Xia had told him to keep this from Yi Qian for the time being. Even the fact that Yi Zhifan had a relationship with the Deputy Chief of Staff Du was not to be mentioned to her. However, little Yi didn't seem surprised. Instead, she seemed to understand. It was enough to show that she already knew, but it couldn't have been Captain Xia who told her. So that's what happened. Yi Qian pursed her lips slightly. After thinking for a while, she told him everything that happened in the mall today. When I left, Sun Dongqing told me that I wouldn't be happy for long. Once Ying enters the army, I'll suffer. So, when Lu Tuan mentioned that Yi Zhifan had a relationship with the Deputy Chief of Staff Du, I wasn't surprised. Fortunately, she met Yi Zhifan and his group in the morning. Otherwise, she really couldn't explain why she wasn't surprised. It was actually something she knew in her previous life. Principal Chen nodded slightly at her explanation. I see. That makes sense. Since you already know, there are some things that I don't have to hide from you anymore. Principal Chen told Yi Qian everything that he had discussed with Xia Jinyuan at the hospital that day. After Chief Kai went to the University of Science and Technology of China to look for Yi Qian and deal with Sun Yaozu, Yi Qian already knew everything that Xia Jinyuan wanted to hide. The only thing she didn't know was that Yi Zhifan had a relationship with the Deputy Chief of Staff Du because he had saved the Deputy Chief of Staff Du's son. Captain Xia suspects that the two parties are in cahoots. The first is to deal with you, and the second is to deal with the Xia family. He was afraid that you would think too much, so he only mentioned it to me. I'll tell you when I find out the truth. There's no need for that now. You already know what we want to hide from you for the time being. The military commission is also involved. I'm not worried that you'll do something wrong because of your mother. Also, you can't blame Captain Xia for not telling you. I saw that you were about to take the exam, so I told him not to tell you so that you wouldn't be distracted. Principal Qin didn't want to take all the blame for the gap between their lives. If Captain Xia didn't report your mother's matter directly to Commander-in-Chief Xia, I'm afraid that the military commission wouldn't know about it. You can't blame Captain Xia. You should thank him properly. Chapter 2018. Yi Qian could tell that he was defending Xia Jinyuan. He rubbed his forehead and said helplessly, Uncle Qin, I'm not an unreasonable person. Why would I blame him? Just as you said, I should thank him properly. Principal Qin nodded in satisfaction. That's good. When Yi Qian returned to his room, his smile disappeared. His picturesque eyes revealed a sword-like coldness. Yi Ying had saved her life. It seemed that Yi Ying might really enter the army. She only hoped that the military commission would act as soon as possible and cut off Yi Jifan's career. That way, even if Yi Ying entered the army, she would still be the daughter of a guilty official. Although she didn't want to see Yi Ying enter the army, the Du family and family Xia had different political views. If the deputy chief of staff Du really sent Yi Ying, who had a heart condition and a tainted record, to the army, wouldn't that be a weakness? She needed to inform Captain Xia. If Captain Xia didn't return by then, she could directly inform the commander-in-chief. At this time, Yi Jifan, who was feeling proud of his success, didn't know that he was being targeted. He was happy that he made friends with the deputy chief of staff Du's family. He was even happier when he saw the deputy chief of staff Du's wife holding his daughter Yi Ying's hand from time to time. Director Yi is so lucky to have such a beautiful and obedient daughter. The deputy chief of staff Du had always respected his wife. To put it bluntly, he was afraid of his wife. Seeing that his wife liked the little girl, he smiled and said, I have a younger daughter. She's 4 years older than Director Ye's daughter. She's also very obedient. When she enters the army, the two of them will definitely have many things to talk about. Director Yi knew that the deputy chief of staff Du had a daughter in the Nongguang military arts troupe. He was so happy that he flattered without batting an eyelid. Your daughter is the real daughter of a famous family. My daughter is at most a pretty girl from a humble family. Don't annoy your daughter. Regarding the matter of Yi Ying entering the army, it was finally confirmed this time. Even Madame Li had nodded, there were no more questions. Mrs. Li was very satisfied with Yi Jifan's eloquence. He was very good. He was not flattering her, but he always said good things about her family style and education. Such good words were really likable. Therefore, he said, Director Yi, you don't have to belittle yourself. A pretty girl from a humble family also has her own advantages. Although my daughter is well-behaved, she is too opinionated. Director Ye's daughter is so well-behaved. She's considerate and can listen to the adults. Most children nowadays like to make their own decisions and think that they are so great. In reality, they are nothing without the protection of their parents. Director Ye's daughter is very good. I like obedient, sensible, and well-mannered children. Although she inadvertently revealed a seductive attitude that made people feel uncomfortable, her words were gentle and delicate. No matter what she said, her sitting posture was not right, and her face did not show any anger or embarrassment. Instead, she asked him for advice very gently. From this point of view, she was better than many girls who thought they were good at everything. You flatter me. Ying doesn't dare to be rash in front of you. I always feel that everything you say is right. Ying will listen carefully. Yi Ying looked as if she could not stand the compliment. Her face was full of shyness. You have a temperament that others don't have. I can't describe it. Ying only feels that if Madam can give me advice, even if it's just a little bit, I will benefit for the rest of my life. If Yi Jifan's words satisfied Madame Li, then Yi Ying's words really touched the bottom of her heart. Madame Li's originally polite smile immediately became more sincere. Chapter 2019. Mrs. Li, who had been strong all her life, hated it when others disobeyed her. What she liked most was when others did as she said. Mrs. Li laughed at Yi Ying's words. What an obedient girl. She looks good and has a good temper. Director Yi, you are so lucky. In the face of praise, Yi Jifan didn't show his joy on his face. His attitude was quite good. He said modestly, Madam, you flatter me. I'm relieved that I didn't make you angry. He was telling the truth. He had wanted to bring Sun Dongqing, but he changed his mind and only brought Yi Ying. He was really worried that Yi Ying would say something wrong and make Mrs. Li angry. Sun Dongqing would make a scene on the spot, and then his relationship with Mr. Du's family would be broken. Now that he had seen Yi Ying's outstanding performance from beginning to end, Yi Jifan had already decided that he would rather bring his daughter than Sun Dongqing out for social events in the future. Seeing that her father was satisfied, Yi Ying heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. She did not know Mrs. Li's temperament, but she knew that all elders liked obedient, and gentle young people. Therefore, she followed Mrs. Li's wishes the whole night. She did whatever Mrs. Li asked her to do. In order to enter the army, it was worth it to be lectured by the wife of a deputy chief of staff. Some people would never be lectured their whole life, just like that wretched girl Yi Jian. The next time they met, he would definitely scare her. What was so great about going to the military school and wearing a military uniform? As long as Yi Ying wanted it, there was nothing she could not get. Yi Ying lowered her eyebrows, and a trace of pride flashed through her eyes. She was still as obedient as Mrs. Li saw her. Yi Ying, who was good at pretending to be obedient, watched Mrs. Li get into the car and leave. She was really relieved. She had been worried the whole night when talking to such a noble lady, for fear that she would make her angry. Fortunately, her obedience pleased Madame Li. Ying, you won yourself a future with your performance tonight. It seems that you have made a lot of progress after being abroad for half a year. Yi Jifan looked at his slender and elegant daughter. Thinking of her performance tonight, he was very pleased. I think Madame Li likes you very much. You should accompany Madame Li these days and learn how to behave like a real young lady. After he finished speaking, he continued, You've always been smarter than Yi Qian since you were young, but you were held back by your mother. Fortunately, you had your own opinions and didn't ruin yourself. Don't listen to your mother in the future. After spending less than 2 hours with Madame Li, Yi Ying could also tell what a real rich lady was like. Her mother was just like her. Alas, she could only embarrass herself in front of Madame Li. Fortunately, father was wise and did not bring mother out. With Madame Li's comparison, Yi Ying began to complain about Sun Dongqing in her heart. If she had a mother like Madame Li, she wouldn't have been suppressed by Yi Qian, that bitch. She would have played with her long ago. At this moment, Yi Ying understood Yi Jifan's good intentions. Her face, which was like a blooming flower, showed deep gratitude. She said softly, Father, thank you. The phone in her small handbag vibrated. Yi Ying said, If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have won Madame Li's favor. She took out the phone. With just one glance, her face suddenly changed. Her slender fingers did not hesitate to hang up the call. Yi Jifan saw that something was wrong with her. Before he could ask, Yi Ying frowned and said with disgust, It was the landlord. I told him that I would pay the rent when I got back. Chapter 2020. Yi Ying was far away in France. Yi Jifan didn't know what she had done or experienced. Plus, Yi Ying's performance tonight was particularly outstanding. Yi Jifan was astute and didn't notice his daughter's panic. On the contrary, because he did control Yi Ying's living expenses when she went abroad, he believed her explanation. You don't have to go to France. If there's anything you need, ask your classmates to pack it up and send it back to China. I'll pay the rent for you. Now that his daughter was going to join the army, there was no need to control her living expenses. Yi Ying's heart was beating like a drum. Seeing that he didn't ask any more questions, her changed expression gradually eased. "Dad, thank you." The waiter of the restaurant happened to drive the car over. Yi Ying, who had a guilty conscience, hurriedly said, "Dad, the car is here." "You drank a lot." "I'll drive." "You'll drive." Yi Jifan, who burped, was surprised. "When did you learn how to drive? Why didn't I know?" Yi Ying, who had finally calmed down, looked a little unnatural. She took the car key from the waiter and motioned for him to help Yi Jifan into the car. "I learned it abroad. My classmates all know how to drive, but I don't know. I thought that I would have to learn in the future, so I might as well get an international driver's license. Unfortunately, international driver's licenses can't be used in our country. I can only use it abroad." Yi Jifan observed that she was very skilled, so he let her be. It was good that a girl could drive. It could be useful in the future. It seemed that his daughter had matured a lot after studying abroad. Otherwise, she wouldn't have performed so well today. Yi Ying, whose palms were sweating, glanced at Yi Jifan, who was resting with his eyes closed, from the rearview mirror. She sighed softly and drove away from the restaurant. Before returning to China, she didn't think that she wouldn't have to go to France again. So many things in France had not been settled yet. No. Since she was going to join the army, she had to settle everything there. She couldn't let any rumors spread back to China. Yi Ying, who was holding the steering wheel tightly, bit her lower lip. As if she had made a decision, she sped into the dark night. Mrs. Li, who had returned to the hotel, said to Deputy Chief of Staff Old Du, "What do you think of Director Ye's daughter? I've been paying attention to her for a long time tonight. Although she's not very dignified, she's well-behaved and obedient. She's a moldable talent." The Deputy Chief of Staff who was unbuttoning his military uniform, did not get the other meaning. He smiled and said, "She's from a small family. How can she be as dignified as a lady from a famous family? Just be obedient." "Did you not understand what I meant?" Madame Li glanced at her husband, who didn't care about anything at home, and thought of her youngest son. "My son doesn't want to join the army. He only wants to go into politics with your elder brother. There's no problem in going into politics, but he needs a capable family and a good wife. I've seen Director Ye's resume. He's an honest official with outstanding performance. He's been promoted all the way to his current position. He only has one daughter. If we give him some other information, he'll definitely be happy." The Deputy Chief of Staff finally understood. He frowned and pondered for a while. Then he shook his head and said, "Let's wait and see. I feel that Yi Jifan is very scheming. If it weren't for the fact that he did save Kai Wei, I wouldn't have associated with this kind of person. As for his daughter, you can wait and see. With our family background, we don't have to worry about not being able to find a good daughter-in-law. The director's daughter's family background is still a little low. When you married me, you suffered so much. Now that I think about it, I feel that I've wronged you." Chapter 2021. The Deputy Chief of Staff who was born into a family of workers and farmers, was most grateful to his wife. It could be said that without his wife, the Du family would not have the status it had today. Therefore, although he did not care about the family affairs, he respected Mrs. Li. Now that he was living a good life, he still felt that he had wronged his wife when he was a poor man. He gently put his arm around his wife's shoulder and sighed. "Let our son marry the daughter of a small director. Don't make him feel wronged. If you really think his daughter is good, you can continue to observe her. I haven't talked to his daughter before, but I feel that although the girl is very obedient, there is always a seductive look in her eyes. She doesn't look very dignified. Mrs. Lee also noticed it. She pursed her lips and thought for a while with a serious expression. After a while, she said, "Observe her for a while. It's not confirmed yet." Girls who were not dignified and seductive were usually not suitable to stay at home, let alone put their thoughts on the family. Rest early. You have an inspection tomorrow. I'll let Director Ye's daughter accompany me around and observe her carefully. If she's really good, I can consider her as my son's daughter-in-law. Anyway, my son is still young, so I'll slowly choose from the girls I like. Mrs. Lee, who was old and tired, yawned. Seeing her husband turn on the TV, she casually picked up a black leather menu on the bedside table. She glanced at it and saw that there was wild ginseng chicken soup. She asked the front desk to send it up. As the top 5-star hotel in the southern province, the Caesar Hotel always prepared the ginseng chicken soup for the guests who stayed in the presidential suite. The room was booked by Yi Jifan, so the bill was naturally paid by him. He also took care of the hotel. No matter what the guests wanted, the hotel had to unconditionally satisfy them. The Caesar Hotel was the headquarters of Hozi in the southern province. In the past, it could even satisfy the needs of murder and arson, not to mention serving a person comfortably. The front desk received the call and immediately informed the kitchen. 10 minutes later, the ginseng chicken soup was sent to the Deputy Chief of Staff Du's room. The Deputy Chief of Staff Du also watched the military news channel to see what international military news was. He did not go to sleep until midnight. Yi Jian, who had already fallen asleep, picked up the vibrating mobile phone on the bedside table. She glanced at the string of 0000 displayed on the screen. She, who was originally lying down, sat up and answered the phone. 3 minutes later, Yi Qian knocked on Uncle Chen's door. Before Principal Chin could get up, she stuffed the note she had just written into the crack of the door and left the hotel with her student ID without looking back. Principal Chen, who was startled awake, bent over to pick up the slip of paper that had been stuffed into his pocket. Looking at the familiar handwriting, a faint smile appeared on his thin face. "Little Yi, you have a bright future ahead of you." Although it was dangerous, he had fought for it with his own strength. This was the true pride and glory that belonged to him. There were only 2 words on the note: "I have something to do." Other than that, there were no other words. Soldiers who left without saying goodbye needed to be understood, especially Special Forces soldiers who left without saying goodbye. Perhaps they would never see each other again after this parting. Uncle Chen, who was standing in front of the window, waited for 2 minutes before he saw the most familiar figure pass by the hotel fountain. She was dressed casually and fearlessly walked into the long night. There was news from abroad that an engineering team from their country had been robbed. Most importantly, this engineering team was sent by the Military Research Institute. They had a lot of confidential information. Once the information was leaked, it would cause a huge storm. Chapter 2022. The mission this time was to rescue the controlled engineering team overseas and secretly bring them back. Yi Qian needed to meet up with Pigeon and the others before setting off together. When she arrived at the airport, she received another call from the Major General. The only people in the Snowfield Brigade who could contact her directly were Captain Xia and the Major General of the Army. Listening to the Major General's stern voice, Yi Qian's expression turned even colder. Head straight to Jean City to meet up with the other 9 comrades and set off on a military cargo ship. Major General Yang's voice was low and serious on the other end of the phone. The engineering team is carrying a transmission point that communicates with our military satellite. Our military knows that the engineering team is being controlled because we received the signal that they would only use if they had no other choice. Because it's a fake trip abroad, on the surface, it looks like the engineering team was sent by a company. The controlling party doesn't know that our country already knows. Yi Jian, all information related to you in this operation will be erased. You can only recover your identity after the mission is completed. The Major General paused slightly and asked Yi Qian, do you know what it means to erase all information? I do. Yi Qian answered in a low and cold voice. Including my school record, all personal information related to me will be erased. I will no longer be a legal citizen of our country. I will no longer exist. That's a very comprehensive understanding. There's more important information that will be told to you when you meet up with your comrades. It was not convenient to say too much over the phone, so the Major General reminded Yi Qian before hanging up. At 3:20 a.m., Yi Qian took a plane from Nan Province to Jin City Airport. Pigeon had already arrived at Jin City Airport. After the car stopped, he turned around and said to the two comrades sitting in the back, she will arrive at the airport in 3 hours. You two haven't seen her yet, but I have. I'll just go in and pick her up when she arrives. The people in charge of the overseas rescue mission were all from the Snowfield Brigade. Everyone's code name was Chinese. Other than Pigeon, there were two other comrades in the car. One of them was called Weaving Sparrow, and the other was called Walking Cuckoo. Both of them had been overseas for training some time ago and had only returned a month ago. The country they went to was a country that was exposed to the sun all year round. Both of them came back with tanned skin. Since it was winter in their country, they had to take care of their skin for a month before their skin tone lowered to a healthy bronze color. When the two heard this, they shook their heads at the same time. GK said seriously, it's precisely because we haven't seen her before that we should go and pick her up. We can't be casual when meeting for the first time. We have to be polite. Seeing this, the pigeon smiled and said, all right, let's go together. Yi Qian is easy to recognize. Although you haven't seen her before, you'll definitely be able to recognize her from the crowd. As a soldier, he had a familiar aura, so naturally, he could recognize him at a glance. Zhou smiled and said, I want to see if she can recognize us at a glance. Pigeon, you wait outside. Weaving Sparrow and I will go in to pick her up. How about it? You want to test Yi Qian's judgment? Ha ha ha, as long as she sees you, she will definitely recognize you at first glance. Pigeon said confidently. It was obvious that he recognized Yi Qian's ability. Yi Qian wasn't an ordinary female soldier. With her amazing shooting skills, she could crush everyone. Even so, Pigeon didn't stop his comrades from testing her. This was their first time working with Yi Qian. It was only right for them to speed up their cooperation in the future. Chapter 2023. Weaving Sparrow and Zhou didn't mean to make things difficult for Yi Qian. They just wanted to deepen their understanding of each other as soon as possible. Yi Qian only knew that a comrade from the Snowfield Brigade would come to pick him up, but he didn't know who it would be. She followed the crowd to the exit. When she was about 5 meters away from the exit, her gaze swept across the crowd. Weaving Sparrow and Zhou, who were mixed in the crowd, saw many tourists arriving in Jin City in the early morning. Their gazes also swept across the crowd walking towards them. When Weaving Sparrow's gaze fell on a young girl walking with her head held high and her chest puffed out. She wasn't carrying anything in her hands. A faint smile appeared in her eyes. Straight ahead, 9 o'clock, 168 centimeters, short hair, black coat, no luggage. At this moment, his gaze had already met the girl in the black coat. Before he could finish describing her features, the girl with stunning facial features smiled at him. Less than a second after his gaze fell on her, the girl also locked her gaze on him and smiled at him. Identity confirmed, Weaving Sparrow said with a smile on her face. She raised her hand and waved at Yi Qian, who was walking over. Zhou Wan, who also smiled, lowered her voice and said quickly. She's stunning. No wonder those guys who saw her loved to say beautiful when they mentioned her. That's not called beautiful, is it? What's it called? Weaving Sparrow, who also had a look of amazement in her eyes, quickly said. She had to finish before Yi Qian got close. It would be awkward if she heard. Are you stupid? It's called stunning. Zhou Wan, who still had a smile on her face and didn't move her lips, said quickly and fell silent. They were all specially trained special forces. They knew a little about lip reading. Yi Qian definitely knew it too. Yi Qian could recognize his comrades from the Snowfield Brigade, just like how they could recognize her. There were two main reasons: the first, temperament. The second, the gaze. As soldiers who had undergone strict training, their temperament was often different from ordinary people. Yi Qian could see the sharpness in the eyes of the two people in casual clothes. Yi Qian, who was smiling at them, quickened his pace and walked over. Weaving Sparrow was a southerner, while Zhou Wan was a northerner. If they hadn't introduced themselves, Yi Qian wouldn't have been able to tell that one was a northerner and the other a southerner. Their physiques and heights were about the same, and they didn't have any local accents. It was indeed hard to tell. As the scout, Sparrow Weaver introduced herself and quickly explained why they had come to pick her up. Pigeon told us that you would definitely recognize us at a glance. I thought you would definitely recognize us, but it would take at least a few seconds. Who knew that you were only 2 seconds behind me? It's easy to recognize you. You were sizing me up just now, so it's easier for me to detect you. After shaking hands with the two and briefly introducing himself, Yi Qian smiled and said, "You have the same aura and the same gaze. It's hard not to recognize you." Ji Ke and Zhou Wan laughed softly. The two of them walked out together with Yi Qian. When the pigeons who had been waiting outside saw the three of them, they smiled and went over to welcome them. "Happy New Year, Yi Qian." "Happy New Year." When Yi Qian saw her comrades, the smile on her delicate lips deepened. "I haven't seen you in a few days. Why do I feel like you've put on some weight?" "No way. You can tell." Pigeon laughed softly. Her extremely pleasant and soft laughter rang out. Yi Qian couldn't help but soften her footsteps to listen. She couldn't bear to let the sound of her footsteps disturb her enjoyment of listening. Chapter 2024. He straightened his clothes and gestured 3 fingers at Yi Qian. The mandatory requirement was to gain 1.5 kilograms. They only had 20 dumplings for 30 nights, and I was the only one who ate 30 dumplings. I had no choice, my weight didn't meet the standard, so I was targeted by the J5. The Snowfield Brigade's management of the Special Forces was extraordinarily strict. In the harsh and uninterrupted physical training, tactical training, weapons and explosives training, you were not allowed to lose weight. If you lost weight, it meant that you didn't eat enough. There were no conditions for you to reach the standard weight. Of course, you couldn't be fat either. The consequences of being fat were more serious than being thin. If you could gain weight under such harsh training, you must have been slacking off. You had to work overtime. Yi Qian got into the car and heard this rule for the first time. His face showed obvious surprise. He looked at Ji Ke, who was driving, then turned to look at Zhou Wan and Dove in the back. After a while, he suddenly understood. No wonder I said your height and weight were about the same. So there was such a rule. Do you know where this rule came from? Dove leaned forward and explained to Yi Qian this rule in the Snowfield Brigade. In the early days of the Snowfield Brigade's establishment, a 6-man combat team carried out missions. Before the scout died, he told his captain that if his body couldn't be brought back to his homeland, please bring his uniform back. It was a rule that made her want to laugh, but it suddenly became serious. Yi Jian put away the smile on her face and quietly listened to the past that made her feel awe-inspiring. At that time, there was no way to bring his fallen comrade back to his homeland. So, our senior took off his uniform with tears in his eyes and put it on himself. The scout who died watched his captain put on his uniform and said, "I'm still too skinny. It's too small for you." Then he closed his eyes. After the mission was completed, the captain who came back wearing his comrade's uniform suggested to the military that the special forces who joined the Snowfield Brigade in the future must be of the same height. That way, they could ensure the same weight as much as possible. The standard weight of the team couldn't be more than 4 kilograms. If it was, I was afraid that your comrade wouldn't be able to come back wearing your uniform. It turned out that behind the seemingly unwritten rules, there was actually such a sad story that made people cry. As a special force, the Snowfield Brigade would carry out many missions that could only be carried out in secret. Just like Yi Qian's mission this time, it was a mission that could not be made public and could only be carried out in secret. If someone really died, they might only bring back the uniform of their comrade. There were still many tragic stories about the Snowfield Brigade that no one knew. Pigeon had only mentioned one of them, but it was enough to shock Yi Qian. This mission is also a secret mission. The engineering team that we are rescuing will only give us a week. If we don't succeed in rescuing them within a week, or if the controlling party discovers that they are not part of the company's engineering team, Qing Niao, even if we have arrived at our destination, there is no need to rescue them anymore. She then asked Yi Qian, "Qing Niao, do you know why we don't need to rescue them anymore?" "Because they will take care of themselves." Yi Qian's heart palpitated as he clenched his fists and spoke softly. Because they were all soldiers who could sacrifice themselves for the country at any time. There was a sharp light in his dark eyes as he looked at Pigeon and said, "Even if there is an optimal rescue period of a week, we will try to save them one day earlier." Chapter 2025. That's right. It also means that our mission is full of danger. If we're not careful, we might come back wearing the uniform of our comrades. So, Qing Niao, you have to be mentally prepared, Pigeon said softly. She enunciated every word clearly, as if she was reminding her. Yi Qian nodded, indicating that he was mentally prepared. When the Major General told her that the military would erase her identity for this mission, she knew how dangerous this mission was. But no matter how dangerous it was, she would still face it. She would never embarrass the military uniform that carried the responsibility. She also didn't want to hear the news of the engineering team waiting for rescue. They were no longer needed. Pigeon's mobile phone vibrated. When the call connected, Long Ying's voice came through. He looked at Yi Qian and smiled. "I've received, Yi Qian." The other side asked something, and Pigeon laughed softly. "You're in good spirits. You should have rested on the plane." Although he didn't know who it was, Yi Qian raised his eyebrows and replied with a smile, "I slept from takeoff to landing. I didn't wake up halfway, so of course I'm in good spirits." "Thank you for your concern. Did you hear that? The person in question told you in a loud voice that she's in good spirits." Pigeon's smile deepened, and she replied, "Now the speed is 90 kilometers per hour. We'll arrive at the school in 10 minutes. Yes, Longing will need another hour and a half." There were a total of 10 people on this mission. Longing was from Ninghai Province. He immediately set off from home when he received the mission. Ninghai Province was further from Ninghai Province than Ninghai Province, so he was the last to arrive. The temporary meeting place was a hotel near Jinhai Civil Aviation University. After Longing arrived, they would take a cargo ship from Jinhai port. They would need to transfer to another plane to reach their destination. Yi Qian knew all the Snowfield Brigade members waiting in the hotel. They were all comrades who had participated in the training with the Storm Commandos. They only said, "Happy New Year," and sat down to discuss. The satellite signal was received here, and our engineering team should be working here. It's on an island 400 kilometers away from the work site to the signal. 2 hours before they were controlled, they were still in regular contact with the country. 2 hours later, they were 400 kilometers away. The military suspects that our engineering team left the site by helicopter after the hijacking. The one who spoke was Pigeon. He was the leader of the operation team. The helicopters that can appear at my engineering team's work site have all been approved by the government. That is to say, it is very likely that our engineering team boarded the plane normally. After arriving at the destination, they found that something was wrong, so they immediately contacted the government. Now that the human body temperature sensor signal is flashing, for the time being, we believe that our engineering team has not been detected by the controller. There are 2 possibilities. First, they don't know about the situation. Second, they know but don't dare to contact us. The local enterprises have been doing business with our enterprises for 7 years, so the possibility of the former is higher. They still don't know the situation and think that our engineering team is completing the surveying work as usual. Young Sparrowhawk looked at the battle map, then looked at the information of the companies in the country and said, "If the local companies still don't know about it, then it's actually good news for us. It means that the identity of our engineering team hasn't been exposed. Now that the human body temperature signal is still there, the personal safety of our engineering team is still safe." Chapter 2026. In the room where the curtains were closed, only Pigeon's soft chirping could be heard. It was no longer as soft and gentle as usual. Instead, it was filled with coldness. That's right, but if the human body temperature signal disappears, it means that our engineering team is in danger. He tapped lightly on his notebook with a pencil. According to the military's arrangement, we need to take a 48-hour cargo ship and then transfer to a plane to the destination country. Since the satellite signal is coming from the island, we need to sneak onto a sightseeing cruise ship and jump into the sea when we are about 34 nautical miles away from the island. It's been 6.5 hours since our engineering team was robbed. Brothers, we need to be fast when we're going ashore with heavy loads. We need to complete the infiltration and rescue within 4 days. Instead of taking a plane to the destination country, they took a cargo ship to sneak in. Then, they used a fake identity to enter the destination country. This was all for the sake of concealing their identities and the difference in time. Next was the assignment of the combat mission. Even though Chang'ing had not arrived yet, he had been assigned a mission that would be given to him when he arrived. Without using a pen or paper, Pigeon, whose fingers were soaked in water, placed the assignment on the dark coffee table in the hotel according to the satellite map of the island. The standard operation team consisted of 6 people in a team. There were 2 snipers, 1 explosives expert, 1 firepower support, and 2 assaulters. This mission was a covert rescue mission, so there were 2 rescuers, 1 firepower support, and 1 assaulter. The mission of the team of 10 was clear. For this mission, Pigeon arranged for Yi Qian to be the first assaulter. You have a petite physique and are good at stealth combat. You are very suitable for infiltration on the island. Bai He will be the second assaulter and will be in the same team as you. Bai He and Yi Qian had worked together before, so it was best for them to be in the same team. The 2 did not have any objections. The rescue team will be the last team to infiltrate the island. They will also be the reinforcement team. Banjo, Vulture, you 2 will be in the same team. Yes. Following Pigeon's arrangement, the team members who had their own positions nodded without any objections. Every member of the Shuayu team had a main attacker and a support attacker. They could be either assaulters or exploders. The only difference was that they were strong in one area and weak in the other. Just like Yi Qian, she could be both an assaulter and a sniper. Pigeon, who had been on a mission with Yi Qian, knew her strengths and would naturally arrange things according to her strengths. 10 minutes before Long Eagle arrived, Pigeon carefully wiped the tea table with a wet towel to avoid leaving fingerprints. When Long Eagle arrived, the group of 10 immediately left the hotel and headed to the port of Jin City to board the ship. The cargo ship was a cargo ship that transported weapons from outside the country. It was controlled by the country, and those who could board the ship were all active soldiers of the country. Even so, Pigeon and the others had snuck onto the ship in secret. Even the captain did not know. The Snowfield Brigade quickly sent their coordinates back to the military. At 9:00 sharp, the cargo ship left the port and headed for the vast sea. Major General Liu stood up from the computer and said to the technical soldier who had been tracking the signal closely, "Take shifts 24 hours a day. No one is allowed to leave their post at will. If anything happens, report it immediately." A secret rescue mission was much more difficult than a normal rescue mission. Everyone had to be in disguise, and even the weapons they brought with them couldn't be their own weapons. With Q King as their backup, although this mission was highly dangerous, they were still very confident. Chapter 2027. The 48 hours of turbulence at sea didn't make Yi Qian feel any discomfort. She didn't vomit, dizziness, or any other seasickness. If she didn't, the other members of the Snowfield Brigade wouldn't either. They had all undergone training at sea, and these things that would affect their combat state shouldn't happen to them. There was no sunlight, no fresh air, and they didn't know when night was coming or when day would come. Yi Qian, who had been eating hardtack for 2 days, waited quietly to get out of the cabin. They arrived at a port in South Asia. This country had been trading military weapons with China. As the cargo ship was about to enter the port, the 10 members of the Snowfield Brigade came out of the lower cabin like ghosts. The military boots stepped on the iron sheet, making rhythmic thud-thud sounds. Yi Qian, who was walking in the lower cabin, could even smell the rust in the air constantly entering her nose. "Left, left, left, keep up." In front of them, the pigeon's voice was so low that it could only be heard at a close distance. It ordered the comrades behind it to move forward quickly. The military provided the blueprint of the lower cabin of the cargo ship, and the 10 people left one by one according to the escape route on the blueprint. There was a time difference of almost 3 hours between the country and China. They left Jin City 48 hours ago and arrived 48 hours later. The time in China was 9 in the morning, but here it was 6 in the morning. The port where the cargo was delivered was a military port in this country, and it was heavily guarded. The 10 people came out of the lower cabin in groups of 3 and quickly took turns to move forward to avoid the soldiers in camouflage uniforms. 4:00, 3 soldiers, get out of the way. 4 meters to the deck. There are soldiers patrolling on the shore with binoculars. Group C, be on guard. Group A, B, and B, move forward quickly and exchange positions. They communicated with sign language the whole time, and they kept alternating between moving forward and being on guard until all 10 people went around the back of the cargo ship and jumped into the sea. The sea was foggy in the early morning. After entering the sea, the 10 people swam from the surface to the shore. There was a commercial vehicle arranged by the embassy on the shore, and everyone's identification was in the vehicle. The 10 drenched people got on the car and checked their IDs first. After confirming that there were no mistakes, they quickly changed. Yi Qian was a female soldier, so all the male soldiers on the bus consciously looked straight ahead. The three male soldiers sitting in the back covered their eyes with their clothes and turned their heads to look out the window until Yi Qian finished changing. Yi Qian and Bai He were the first to enter the departure lounge. The 10 of them only made brief eye contact when they boarded the plane. The plane took off at 12:00 in China. Xia Jinyuan looked down at the time and jumped into a convertible jeep. He said to a foreign man with brown hair and brown eyes beside him in fluent English, "Partner, we can start to deliver the goods and get the money. Are you sure? If there are any police officers or Chinese people, you take care of them yourself." The brown-eyed foreign man glanced at the Chinese man with contempt. This Chinese man was crazy about money. He really didn't mind if the police opened fire and let him have a taste of his own medicine. Wearing a pair of ripped jeans and a motorcycle leather jacket, Xia Jinyuan's eyes were full of arrogance, and his temperament had changed drastically. He was no longer a soldier, but a Chinese man who worked for an arms dealer who sold guns and ammunition. He was willing to sacrifice his life for money. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows at the man who had one arm on the car door. While the man was waiting for him to answer, he stepped on the accelerator and drove away, leaving a long trail of exhaust. Chapter 2028. The foreign man was caught off guard that Xia Jinyuan would drive away. Half of his weight was leaning on the door, so he staggered a few times before finally falling on his butt. He choked on the exhaust from the fall. He got up and roared angrily at the car that was driving away, "Fuck. Damn Chinese, go back to your country. Don't let me see you again, or I'll definitely blow your head off and teach you a lesson. Fuck you." Xia Jinyuan could no longer hear him cursing. Of course, if he had heard him, he wouldn't have minded punching him. After all, he fought his way in with his fists. He also wouldn't have minded taking out a pistol from his trouser pocket and stuffing the muzzle into the foreign man's mouth to shut him up. This was a country where private ownership of firearms was legal. Some women would keep a gun in their car in case they were robbed. Weapons were rampant, drugs were rampant, and law and order were extremely poor. This was the case in the slums. Most criminals hid in these places, living a more carefree life than the rich. Some of the triads in the country illegally hid firearms through these places. China prohibited private ownership of firearms, but there were clear laws. However, in mid-May last year, a vicious gunfight broke out in a southern province. Although it was an internal gang conflict, it also seriously threatened the safety of the people. After the incident, a gun without bullets was left at the scene. This gun was prohibited from being imported into China, and even its official use was prohibited. However, it appeared in the hands of a gang member. After a local police investigation, 2 important gang members were arrested at the end of July. After interrogation, they found out that their firearms were purchased from someone in China. Then, the Guangdong Provincial Customs did a spot check on a batch of detergent and found bullets packed in waterproof bags in the detergent. This matter attracted the attention of the local customs. Within a month, 4 customs offices in China found bullets hidden in imported goods. After a police investigation, they found that all the bullets came from the same country and were sent to the same person. The smuggling of firearms was no longer a problem that the police could solve. A large number of firearms illegally flowed into China. If the main criminal was not caught, it would bring great panic to society. Xia Jinyuan and his team only had one mission: to find the person who dared to directly trade with foreign firearms dealers. There were 6 people from the Snowfield Brigade on this mission. As usual, Xia Jinyuan led the team. He infiltrated the firearms dealers, while K7, Z7, and the other 4 were external help. Xia Jinyuan whistled as he ditched the foreign man and drove the car onto the street. When he passed by a convenience store, he turned off the engine and went in to buy a pack of cigarettes. When he came out, he seemed to have thrown the package and receipt into the trash can. Then, like a delinquent, he drove away in a jeep that had not been washed for a long time. Case 7, prepare your weapons. Our brothers will be here soon. Case 7, who picked up the note, glanced at it and burned it with a lighter. After that, it was time for them to work. They were going to rob a batch of smuggled firearms and bring them back to China for their brothers to carry out the mission. Brothers were indeed brothers. They were really fated to meet in the same country even though they were on different missions. Xia Jinyuan and the others knew that Yi Jian would come, but Yi Jian and the others didn't know that their comrades were also here. The 3-hour flight to the destination, the weapons and equipment, and boarding the sightseeing boat, the whole process went very smoothly. It was so smooth that it was unbelievable. Chapter 2029. He pulled open the bag containing the golf equipment, and the first item shocked all 10 of them. Oh my god, FMAS topless rifle, feline equipment. We need to land on the island at night. The FAMAS rifle is equipped with aiming equipment and night vision equipment to improve combat stability. Pigeon took out the topless rifle and put it away. He then took out another piece of equipment from the golf bag and waved it at his comrades who were starting to equip the topless rifle. Another good item, a bone conduction microphone, a piece of equipment for the U.S. Special Forces. The bone conduction microphone was currently the most advanced type of radio communication. Unlike the laryngeal vibrating headset, it consisted of an ear, a bone conduction microphone, and a bone conduction loudspeaker. It was a type of wireless communication that could be completed by moving a PTT switch. When fighting inside city blocks and buildings, under the interference of loud gunfire and noise, it was often difficult for combat personnel to clearly hear what their comrades were saying. However, there was always a situation where one couldn't clearly hear what their comrades were saying through the earpiece. It was a type of microphone that could vibrate through the skull and transmit sound to the headset. Even the comrades who were at the edge of gunfire could hear clearly what was being said. To be able to obtain equipment only available to the special forces in a foreign country. The 10 comrades of the Snowfield Brigade looked at each other. This was a little difficult to explain. How did the military get their hands on such advanced equipment? The electronic equipment included GPS, bone conduction microphone, tactical vests, a topless rifle, and 4 magazines of ammunition per person. In addition to the rifle's original magazine, there were a total of 125 rounds of ammunition. Daggers, climbing ropes, military boots, helmets, bulletproof vests, knee guards. After checking everything one by one, the 10 of them were no longer surprised. They were all high-quality goods, and they were all Western goods. All traces of Chinese origin had been wiped clean. Pigeon turned on the only portable military computer he had brought with him. His calloused fingers quickly tapped on the keyboard. When he saw the flashing red dot, Pigeon let out a sigh of relief. It's still on the island. It hasn't moved. Other than not being able to turn on the computer for 3 hours on the plane, Pigeon would pay close attention every 2 hours to see if the satellite signal had moved or disappeared. Fortunately, the signal was still there. The closest distance between the sightseeing boat and the island was 34 nautical miles, which was 62,000 meters away from the destination. If they really wanted to swim there, it would take a few days and nights. At that time, when the Pigeon said that it would swim over, Yi Qian only took it as a joke and did not take it seriously. For a distance of 65,000 meters, of course, they would choose to take a speedboat. There were speedboats available to rent on the island for the night. Of course, they would not rent them. They would choose to temporarily use them. To put it bluntly, they were secretly using them. Night gradually fell, and the sound of the sea lapping against the shore seemed to be louder than during the day. Someone stood up in the dark basement and seemed to be very irritated. After walking for about 5 minutes, the person changed to another seat and sat down. There were a total of 12 people in the engineering team, but there were only 10 people in the basement. 2 engineers had been taken away during the day and had not returned yet. The 10 people who were left in the basement for several days and nights were all dispirited and listless. They sat with their backs against the cold wall, not knowing when the sky would turn dark and when the sun would rise. At 9:00 in the evening, the sound of footsteps came from outside the iron gate, followed by the sound of the lock being unlocked. The 10 people who had closed their eyes were shocked and opened their eyes. 2 dazzling lights suddenly swept through the open iron gate, so bright that they couldn't help but close their eyes and raise their hands to block the strong light. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.